The second bullet tore through the air where a young Marine's head had been one heartbeat earlier. Instead, it found the shoulder of a woman nobody in that roadside diner had looked at twice. A limping nurse in blood-stained scrubs who'd thrown herself across a stranger's body like a human shield. Glass shattered. Screams erupted. And as Harper Vale hit the ground hard, still covering the soldier beneath her, three masked gunmen realized too late they'd just made a catastrophic mistake. Because the exhausted ER nurse bleeding out on the diner floor wasn't who she appeared to be. She was a ghost from a war most people had forgotten, and she'd just saved the life of a Marine whose brothers would burn the world down to return the favor. If you want to see how a town that overlooked a hero learned to fear crossing her family, stay with me until the very end. Drop a like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Mercy Ridge Medical Center had been burning Harper Vale's retinas for 16 hours straight when she finally clocked out at 6:47 a.m. Her scrubs carried the ghost stains of 3 code blues, 2 traumas, and 1 violent psych patient who'd taken a swing at her jaw before security dragged him away. Her left leg, the one that didn't quite work right anymore, throbbed with every step through the employee exit. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody said thank you. Harper had learned not to expect either. The October morning air hit her face like cold water as she limped across the parking lot toward her decade-old sedan. Frost clung to the windshields around her. Somewhere in the distance, Pinewood Falls was waking up, a small Virginia town that prided itself on American flags, high school football, and minding its own business. Harper had moved here 3 years ago, specifically because nobody asked questions. Her hand shook slightly as she unlocked her car door, not from cold, but from exhaustion that went bone deep. She'd been running on coffee and muscle memory for the last 8 hours. The kind of autopilot that came from years of functioning in crisis mode. Most people broke under that pressure. Harper had been forged in it. She slid behind the wheel and stared at the dashboard for a long moment. Her reflection in the rearview mirror showed a 34-year-old woman with dark circles under her eyes, brown hair pulled back in a messy bun, and a face that had forgotten how to smile somewhere along the way. The plan was simple. Drive home, collapse into bed, sleep until her next shift. But her stomach had other ideas. It growled loudly enough to echo in the quiet car, reminding her she hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. Harper sighed, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. There was a diner about 10 minutes down Route 9. Nothing fancy, just decent coffee and eggs that didn't come from a vending machine. Rosie's Diner sat at the junction where Route 9 met Old Mill Road, a squat brick building with a flickering neon sign that had been there since the 1970s. Harper had stopped in a handful of times over the past few years, always during odd hours when the place was nearly empty. The staff knew her face, but not her name. That was exactly how she liked it. She pulled into the gravel lot at 7:15 a.m. 3 other vehicles sat in the parking spaces. A pickup truck with contractor logos, a silver minivan, and a Jeep that had seen better days. Through the large front windows, Harper could see maybe 6 people scattered across the booths and counter stools. Perfect. Quiet. She grabbed her wallet, locked the car, and limped toward the entrance. The October wind cut through her thin scrub jacket, but she barely noticed. Cold was relative when you'd once spent 36 hours in a frozen trench waiting for evac. The bell above the door chimed as Harper pushed inside. Warmth and the smell of coffee and bacon grease wrapped around her immediately. A tired-looking waitress, Donna, according to her name tag, glanced up from behind the counter and gave a half wave. "Sit anywhere, hun." Harper chose a booth near the back corner, away from the windows, with a clear view of both the entrance and the kitchen door. Old habits. She slid onto the cracked vinyl seat and picked up the laminated menu, though she already knew what she wanted. "Coffee?" Donna appeared at her elbow with a pot in hand. "Please. Black." "Food?" "Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, side of bacon." "You got it." Donna scribbled on her pad and disappeared toward the kitchen. Harper wrapped both hands around the coffee mug when it arrived, letting the heat seep into her fingers. She stared out the window at the empty highway, her mind deliberately blank. This was the hardest part of her routine, the space between constant motion and forced rest, where thoughts had room to creep in if she wasn't careful. She was good at not being careful. At the counter, a young man in Marine Corps dress blues sat alone nursing his own coffee. Fresh-faced, maybe 22, with the kind of rigid posture that marked him as either newly enlisted or recently returned from deployment. Harper's gaze lingered on him for half a second longer than it should have, muscle memory cataloging details she no longer needed to catalog. Lance Corporal, based on the insignia. Probably heading home on leave or maybe fresh out of training. Not your problem, she reminded herself. Her eggs arrived. Harper ate mechanically, fork to mouth, chew, swallow, repeat. The bacon was overcooked. The toast was cold. She didn't care. Food was fuel, nothing more. She was halfway through her meal when the bell above the door chimed again. 3 men walked in. Harper's fork paused midway to her mouth. Something was wrong. The first man was tall and wiry, wearing a black jacket despite the warmth inside the diner. The second was shorter, stockier, with a red baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. The third looked barely out of his teens, twitchy and pale, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. They didn't look at the menu board, didn't scan for empty seats. They looked at the people. Harper's pulse kicked up, not panic, just recognition. She'd seen this energy before, in 100 different situations that all ended the same way. These men weren't here for breakfast. The tall one moved first, pulling a black bandana over his face. Then the guns came out. "Everybody shut the hell up and get on the floor!" The tall man's voice cracked through the diner like a whip. He waved a semi-automatic pistol in a wide arc, pointing at the handful of stunned customers. "Hands where I can see them! Now!" Donna dropped the coffee pot. It shattered across the tile floor, sending brown liquid everywhere. An older man at the counter started to rise. "I said get down!" The stocky one in the red cap fired a shot into the ceiling. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space, a physical force that punched through the air and left ears ringing. People screamed. A woman in the corner booth threw herself under the table. The contractor from the parking lot dropped to his knees, hands raised. The Marine at the counter froze, half turned on his stool, eyes wide. And Harper. Harper stayed perfectly still, fork still in hand, watching. Her brain had already shifted gears. The diner had dissolved into a grid of variables. 3 hostiles, 1 firearm confirmed per person, probable additional weapons concealed. 7 civilians plus herself. 2 exits, front door and kitchen. Windows breakable, but not tactically useful. Sight lines compromised by booth dividers. The twitchy kid was the weak link. His hand shook as he held his gun, finger too tight on the trigger, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Dangerous specifically because he was unstable. The tall one was the leader, confident, focused, scanning the room with the efficiency of someone who'd planned this. The stocky one was muscle, following orders, aggressive, looking for an excuse. "Cash! Jewelry! Phones on the floor!" The leader jabbed his gun toward the terrified customers. "You got 10 seconds before I start shooting for real." People scrambled to comply. Wallets hit the tile. A woman unclasped her necklace with trembling fingers. The Marine didn't move. Harper saw it happen in slow motion, the way the stocky gunman's attention locked onto the young soldier still sitting at the counter in full dress uniform. Saw the way anger and something uglier twisted across the robber's face. "You think you're special?" The stocky man stalked toward the Marine, gun raised. "You think that uniform makes you bulletproof?" The Marine's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Didn't reach for anything, kept his hands visible. Smart kid, Harper thought distantly. "I asked you a question." The gunman's voice rose, spiraling toward something uncontrolled. His finger tightened on the trigger, and Harper moved. She didn't think, didn't plan, just acted. 1 second she was sitting in her booth, the next she was launching herself across the diner, her bad legs screaming in protest, her entire body angled like a missile aimed at the Marine's back. "Down!" The word tore out of her throat, not a suggestion, a command honed by years of shouting over artillery fire. She hit the Marine like a linebacker, driving him off the stool and onto the floor just as the gun went off. The bullet meant for his head punched through the space where he'd been sitting and embedded itself in the wall behind the counter. Harper's shoulder slammed into the tile. The impact drove the air from her lungs. The Marine landed beneath her, gasping, his dress blues crumpling. Above them, the stocky gunman stared in shock, his gun still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. For one frozen heartbeat, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. "What the hell?" The leader spun toward them. Harper was already rolling, dragging the Marine with her, putting the counter between them and the shooters. Her mind was ice cold, running through scenarios, calculating angles, assessing threats. "Stay down," she hissed at the Marine. "Don't move. Don't speak." His eyes were wide, but he nodded. The twitchy kid was panicking now, waving his gun at everyone and no one. "We gotta go! We gotta go now!" "Shut up!" The leader backhanded him. "Nobody's going anywhere until—" Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. Someone must have tripped a silent alarm. The leader's head snapped toward the door. "Grab what you can! Move!" The stocky one fired another wild shot, not aimed at anyone in particular, just rage and adrenaline. The bullet punched through a window, spiderwebbing the glass. Harper felt something hot and sharp tear across her thigh. Pain bloomed, immediate and familiar. She looked down and saw blood spreading across her scrub pants, not from the bullet itself, but from a shard of ricocheted tile that had sliced clean through the fabric and into muscle. The Marine saw it too. "You're hit. I'm fine." Harper's voice was flat, brooking no argument. She pressed her palm against the wound, applying pressure. "Stay. Down." The three gunmen bolted for the door, stuffing wallets and phones into their pockets as they ran. The bell chimed mockingly as they shoved through the entrance and disappeared into the parking lot. Tires squealed, then silence. Just ragged breathing and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Harper stayed where she was, crouched behind the counter, hand pressed against her bleeding leg, eyes still locked on the door, waiting to see if they'd come back, waiting for the next threat. The Marine stared at her. You saved my life." Harper didn't respond. She was counting her heartbeats, forcing them to slow, dragging herself back from the edge of the adrenaline cliff. Donna appeared from where she'd been hiding under a booth, her face sheet white. "Oh my God. Oh my God. You're bleeding." "I'm fine," Harper repeated. The words came out automatic, muscle memory from 100 other situations where admitting pain was a luxury she couldn't afford. But when she tried to stand, her leg buckled. The Marine caught her. "Whoa, easy." "I said I'm fine." Harper pushed against his shoulder, trying to regain her feet, but the world tilted sideways. The pain in her leg had shifted from sharp to grinding, and warmth was spreading faster than it should. She looked down. The blood wasn't slowing. "We need an ambulance." Donna was already on the phone, her voice shaking. "There's been a shooting at Rosie's Diner on Route 9. Yes, shots fired. We have injuries." Harper's vision swam. She'd lost blood before. Knew what it felt like when the body started shutting down non-essential systems to preserve the core. This was different. This was bad. The Marine eased her down onto the floor, his hands steady despite the shock in his eyes. "Stay with me. Help's coming." "Check the others," Harper managed. Make sure nobody else is hit." "They're okay. You're the only one." His voice cracked. "You threw yourself in front of a bullet for me." Wasn't a bullet." Harper's words were slurring now. "Just shrapnel, ricochet. I've had worse." She had, in places she didn't let herself think about anymore. The sirens were louder now. Multiple vehicles converging on the diner. Red and blue lights began strobing through the broken window. The Marine was talking to her, keeping her conscious, but his words blurred into static. Harper's training was screaming at her to stay alert, stay aware, but her body had other priorities. Blood loss, shock, the crash after the adrenaline dump. The diner door burst open. Paramedics flooded in, their voices sharp and professional, calling out assessments and directions. "Female, approximately mid-30s, laceration to the right thigh, significant blood loss." Hands pressed against her wound. An IV needle slid into her arm. "Ma'am, can you hear me? What's your name?" Harper tried to answer, but the words wouldn't form. Darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision, soft and insistent. The last thing she saw before she went under was the Marine's face, pale, terrified, and alive. "Good," she thought distantly. "That's good." Then nothing.
It's so bad.
Harper woke to the unmistakable smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Hospital. Her eyes cracked open. Harsh fluorescent lights. White ceiling tiles. IV stand beside the bed, pumping clear fluid into her arm. She was in a recovery room at Mercy Ridge Medical Center, her own hospital, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke. The door opened. A nurse Harper, vaguely recognized from the ER, stuck her head in. "Oh, good, you're awake. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." Harper's voice came out rough, her throat dry. "What's the damage?" 12-inch laceration, moderate blood loss, no major vessels compromised. Dr. Reyes stitched you up. You're lucky. Another inch to the left, and you'd have nicked your femoral artery. The nurse checked the monitors, made a note on her tablet. "You've been out for about 6 hours." 6 hours. Harper's brain started cataloging implications. Shift coverage. Bills. Whether her car was still at the diner. "The police want to talk to you when you're up for it," the nurse continued. "And there's a young man in the waiting room who's been asking about you every 20 minutes since you came in." The Marine. "I don't need visitors." "Well, you're getting them anyway. Doctor's orders say you need to rest, but—" The nurse paused, her expression shifting to something complicated. "There's been some attention. The news picked up the story. You're kind of all over social media." Harper's stomach dropped. "What?" "Someone in the diner recorded part of it on their phone. The video's everywhere. Nurse throws herself in front of armed robber to save Marine." The nurse's tone was gentle, but factual. "You're being called a hero." "I'm not a hero." The words came out harsher than Harper intended. I reacted. That's all." The nurse gave her a look that was equal parts pity and confusion. "Well, the internet disagrees. Try to get some rest. I'll check on you in an hour." She left. Harper stared at the ceiling and felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what she'd spent 3 years avoiding. Attention. Questions. People digging into who she was and where she'd come from. The door opened again. This time it was Dr. Reyes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who ran the ER with ruthless efficiency. "Harper." Dr. Reyes pulled up a chair beside the bed, tablet in hand. "How are you feeling?" "Fine." "You're a terrible liar." Dr. Reyes pulled up Harper's chart. "The good news is you'll make a full recovery. The bad news is you're looking at minimum 2 weeks before you can return to work, and that's if you follow physical therapy protocols." 2 weeks without a paycheck. Harper's jaw tightened. "There's something else," Dr. Reyes continued, her tone shifting. "When the surgeons were cleaning your wound, they found anomalies." Harper went very still. "Old scar tissue, deep penetration damage, shrapnel fragments that weren't from today." Dr. Reyes leaned forward. "Harper, those injuries are consistent with combat trauma, high-velocity fragmentation patterns. I've seen them before in veterans." The silence stretched. "I'm not asking you to explain," Dr. Reyes said quietly, "but I need you to know that this is going in your medical file. And given the media attention, there may be questions." Harper's hands fisted in the thin hospital blanket. "I don't want to talk about it." "You may not have a choice." Dr. Reyes stood. "For what it's worth, what you did today was extraordinary. But you need to take care of yourself. That's not optional." She left. Harper closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the rising panic. 3 years. She'd managed to stay invisible for 3 years. Now everything was unraveling. The police came 2 hours later, a detective named Morris with kind eyes and a notebook full of questions. Harper answered mechanically, sticking to facts, giving nothing extra. Yes, she'd been at the diner. Yes, she'd seen the Marine in danger. Yes, she'd acted on instinct. No, she didn't consider herself a hero. No, she didn't want media attention. No, she didn't have anything else to add. Detective Morris studied her for a long moment. "You have training." It wasn't a question. Harper didn't confirm or deny. "The way you moved, that wasn't civilian panic response. That was tactical." Morris tapped his pen against the notebook. "Military? I don't see how that's relevant." "It's relevant because it explains how a nurse on a 16-hour shift had the presence of mind to assess 3 armed threats, identify the most immediate danger, and execute a protective maneuver that saved a life." Morris's expression was steady. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know training when I see it." Harper stared at the ceiling. "Are we done here?" Morris sighed. "For now, But this case isn't closed. We're still looking for the suspects. He stood, tucked his notebook into his jacket. You did good today, Ms. Vale, whether you want to hear it or not. After he left, Harper was alone with her thoughts. And her thoughts were dangerous. She could feel the past pressing against the walls she'd built, looking for cracks. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, not of today's diner, but of sand and blood and faces she'd sworn she'd forget. The door opened without knocking. A man in an expensive suit walked in, mid-50s, steel gray hair, the kind of polished appearance that screamed upper management. Harper recognized him vaguely from hospital staff meetings she never attended. Richard Brennan, Chief Operating Officer of Mercy Ridge Medical Center. Ms. Vale. Brennan's smile was sharp and professional. I wanted to personally check on you. Harper's instincts prickled. I'm fine. Good, good. Brennan clasped his hands behind his back, pacing to the window. This has been quite an ordeal. The hospital is very concerned about your well-being. I'll be back to work in 2 weeks. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. Brennan turned, and his smile had edges now. Given the circumstances, the media attention, the public scrutiny, the hospital feels it would be best if you took an extended leave. Harper's eyes narrowed. Extended leave. Paid, of course, 3 months, maybe 6. Time to recover properly. Time for the media circus to die down. Brennan's tone was smooth, rehearsed. We're concerned about the optics. The optics. A staff member involved in a violent incident, discharged firearm, public endangerment. Brennan spread his hands. You understand how this looks. The hospital has a reputation to protect. Harper sat up straighter despite the pain in her leg. I didn't endanger anyone. I saved someone's life. And that's admirable, truly. Brennan's smile didn't waver. But the board is concerned about liability. What if you'd been killed? What if someone else had been caught in the crossfire? What if I'd let a 20-year-old Marine get shot in the head while I sat in my booth drinking coffee? Harper's voice was ice. Is that the preferred outcome? Brennan's mask slipped for just a second. Don't be dramatic. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to protect the hospital's image. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Brennan pulled a folder from his briefcase, set it on the rolling tray beside Harper's bed. This is a settlement agreement. Sign it, take the paid leave, and when you come back, we'll discuss your future here. Harper stared at the folder. And if I don't sign? Then we'll have to pursue other options, for the good of the institution. Brennan's tone hardened. You're a per diem employee, Ms. Vale. No contract, no union protection. The hospital can terminate your employment at any time for any reason. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Harper's hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage so deep and old it felt like bedrock. She'd seen this before. Different uniform, same game. The institution protecting itself, the individual expendable. Get out, she said quietly. Brennan blinked. Excuse me? Get out. Harper's voice didn't rise, but something in her tone made Brennan take a step back. I'm not signing anything, and if you try to fire me for saving someone's life, I'll make sure every news outlet that's currently calling me a hero knows exactly how this hospital treats its staff. Brennan's face flushed. You're making a mistake. I've made bigger ones. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Harper lay back against the pillows, her heart pounding, adrenaline singing through her veins again. She'd just made an enemy, but she'd made enemies before. Night fell. The hospital quieted. Harper stared at the ceiling and counted the tiles, an old trick to keep her mind from spiraling. 64 tiles, 12 lights, 1 smoke detector. The door opened again, but this time it was the nurse from earlier, her expression uncertain. Ms. Vale? There's someone here to see you. He's been in the waiting room all day. The young Marine? Harper's first instinct was to say no, to send him away, to maintain the walls. But something in the nurse's expression stopped her. He won't leave, the nurse said quietly. He says he owes you his life and he's not going anywhere until he can thank you properly. Harper closed her eyes. Fine. Send him in. A minute later, the Marine walked through the door, still in his dress blues, though they were rumpled now and stained with coffee. His name tag read SGT Torres. He was older than she'd thought, mid-20s maybe, old enough to have seen deployment. He stopped just inside the doorway, standing at attention. "Ma'am." "You don't have to do that." Harper's voice was tired. "I'm not your commanding officer." "No, ma'am, but you saved my life." Torres took a breath. "I wanted to thank you and to ask why." "Why what?" "Why did you do it? You didn't know me. You could have been killed." Harper looked at him, really looked. Saw the guilt in his eyes, the weight he was already carrying, the way he held himself like a man who'd decided his life was worth less than others. She knew that posture, had worn it herself. "Because you're 25 years old and you have your whole life ahead of you," she said simply, "and because someone had to." "But you're—" Torres struggled for words. "You're a nurse. You're not supposed to—" "I'm a lot of things." Harper cut him off. "The nurse part is recent." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You served." Harper didn't answer. Torres sat down in the chair beside her bed, suddenly looking exhausted. "I called my unit, told them what happened. They're—" He laughed, a broken sound. "They're losing their minds. Half of them are trying to figure out how to get here." "Don't." Harper's voice was sharp. "I don't need—" "With respect, ma'am, that's not your call." Torres met her eyes. "You're one of us, and we take care of our own." Before Harper could respond, her phone buzzed on the side table. The hospital had returned her personal effects. She reached for it, wincing at the pull in her stitches. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, hundreds of notifications from social media accounts she barely used, and one voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. She played it on speaker. "Ms. Vale, this is Major Andrea Cross, USMC. I received a call from one of my Marines regarding an incident today. I'd like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Please call me back at this number." The message ended. Torres was watching her. "That's my CO. She's intense." Harper deleted the voicemail. "I'm not interested." "Ma'am, you don't understand. When Major Cross says she wants to speak with you, it's not optional." "I'm a civilian. Everything is optional." Torres opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, his gaze catching on something. He was staring at her leg, visible beneath the thin hospital gown where the bandages covered the fresh wound, and the old scars beneath it. "What happened to you?" The question came out soft, almost horrified. Harper pulled the blanket up, covering the evidence. "Nothing you need to worry about." But Torres wasn't looking at her leg anymore. He was looking at her face, and there was recognition there, the kind that came from seeing your own trauma reflected back. "You were deployed," he said. It wasn't a question anymore. "Combat zone. Medical personnel." "Sergeant, I think you should—" The door burst open. "Doctor." Reyes stood in the doorway, her expression strained. "Harper, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "There are reporters in the lobby, and not just local, national networks. They're demanding interviews. Hospital security is trying to manage it, but—" Dr. Reyes glanced at Torres, then back to Harper. "Richard Brennan is down there too. He's giving a press conference." Harper's blood went cold. "What?" "He's spinning the story, saying the hospital is conducting a full investigation into the incident, that you acted recklessly, that patient safety is their top priority." Dr. Reyes' hands were shaking. "Harper, he's destroying you." Torres shot to his feet. "He's what?" Harper was already moving, throwing off the blankets, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. Pain screamed through her thigh, but she ignored it. "Ma'am, you can't. You're still recovering. Get me my clothes." "Harper," Dr. Reyes started. "Now." 5 minutes later, Harper was dressed in the spare scrubs the hospital had provided, leaning heavily on a crutch, her face pale but set. Torres hovered beside her like a protective shadow as they made their way toward the elevator. "This is insane," Dr. Reyes muttered, trailing behind them. "You should be in bed." "I should be a lot of things." Harper jabbed the elevator button. "But right now I need to be downstairs before Brennan finishes burying me." The elevator descended. Harper's reflection in the polished doors showed a woman who looked half dead. and wholly furious. The doors opened to chaos. The hospital lobby was packed with people, reporters with cameras, security guards trying to maintain order. And at the center of it all, Richard Brennan stood behind a makeshift podium, his expression grave and concerned. "Deeply value Ms. Vale's service to this institution," he was saying, "but we must prioritize the safety of all our patients and staff. An internal review is underway to determine if proper protocols were followed." "That's a lie." Harper's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every head turned. The cameras swiveled. Brennan's face went white. Harper limped forward, Torres matching her pace, Dr. Reyes trailing uncertainly behind. The crowd parted. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions, but Harper ignored them all. She stopped 3 feet from Brennan and stared him down. "You want to talk about protocol?" Her voice was quiet, deadly. "Let's talk about how 3 armed men walked into a civilian diner and opened fire. Let's talk about how a 25-year-old Marine almost died because nobody else moved. Let's talk about how I'm standing here with 12 stitches in my leg instead of planning his funeral." Brennan's mouth opened and closed. "Ms. Vale, you're clearly not well." "I'm fine." Harper didn't break eye contact. "What I'm not is quiet. You tried to bury this, tried to make me the liability, tried to—" Her voice caught. Because over Brennan's shoulder, through the hospital's glass entrance doors, Harper saw something that made her blood stop. A convoy of vehicles was pulling into the parking lot. Not civilian cars. Military transport vehicles. And Marines, dozens of them, were climbing out in perfect formation. Torres saw it too. His eyes went wide. "Oh my God!" "What?" Brennan turned to look. "What is—" The hospital doors opened, and Major Andrea Cross walked in, flanked by 20 Marines in dress uniform. The lobby went silent. Major Cross was a woman in her early 40s with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that could strip paint. She surveyed the scene with the kind of calm that preceded violence. Then she looked directly at Harper and saluted. Every Marine behind her snapped to attention and saluted in perfect unison. The sound of 20 hands hitting 20 chests in synchronized precision echoed through the lobby like thunder. Harper stood frozen, crutch in hand, staring at the woman she'd never met. Major Cross lowered her salute and walked forward, her boots clicking against the tile. She stopped directly in front of Harper, ignoring Brennan, ignoring the cameras, ignoring everything except the exhausted woman with stitches in her leg. "Staff Sergeant Harper Vale," Cross said, her voice carrying, "former 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 3 tours in Helmand Province, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, Combat Medical Badge." Harper's throat closed. "You saved one of my Marines today," Cross continued, "and I'm here to make sure everyone in this room understands exactly who you are." She turned to face the cameras, and her expression was ice. "This woman is not a liability. She's not reckless. She's a decorated combat veteran who spent 4 years saving lives under fire." Cross's gaze swept across Brennan, freezing him in place. "And anyone who tries to punish her for doing what she was trained to do will answer to the United States Marine Corps." The silence was absolute. Then Torres stepped forward and saluted Harper. One by one, every Marine in the lobby followed suit. And Harper, who hadn't cried in 6 years, felt something crack inside her chest. The cameras were recording everything. The reporters were scribbling frantically. Brennan looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. But Harper only saw the faces of the men and women in front of her, brothers and sisters she'd never met, standing guard over one of their own. Major Cross lowered her hand and spoke quietly, just for Harper. "You're not alone anymore, Marine. We've got your 6. And for the first time in 3 years, Harper believed it. Harper's knees buckled, not from the wound, from the weight of being seen after years of hiding. Torres caught her elbow before she hit the floor, his grip steady and sure. Major Cross's eyes tracked the movement, assessing injury versus shock, and made a decision in half a heartbeat. "Get her a chair." 2 Marines moved instantly, producing a wheelchair from somewhere in the lobby, chaos. Harper wanted to protest, wanted to stand on her own 2 feet, but her body had already made the choice for her. She sank into the seat, crutch clattering to the tile. That last question cut through the noise. Harper's head snapped up. "What?" A young reporter with a microphone pushed closer. Richard Brennan was just claiming the hospital had no knowledge of your military background and that you violated safety protocols. Are you planning legal action? Harper's gaze shifted to Brennan. The COO had backed up 3 steps and looked like he was calculating escape routes. His carefully constructed narrative had just detonated in his face, and everyone in the room knew it. Major Cross stepped between Harper and the cameras, her presence a physical barrier. This press conference is over. Ms. Vale is a patient recovering from injuries sustained while protecting a civilian. She needs rest, not interrogation. But Major, the public has a right. The public has a right to facts, not a circus. Cross's voice could have frozen nitrogen. Here are the facts. A decorated combat veteran acted on instinct to save a life. 3 armed criminals opened fire in a public space, and this hospital's administration tried to make the victim into a liability. She paused, letting that sink in. Any further questions can be directed to the Marine Corps Public Affairs Office. She nodded to her Marines. 4 of them formed a protective square around Harper's wheelchair. Torres took position at her right shoulder, his jaw set. "Move," Cross ordered, and the formation began walking toward the elevator. The reporters tried to follow, but hospital security, suddenly very motivated, created a human wall. Brennan stood frozen behind his podium, his face the color of old milk. Dr. Reyes appeared at Harper's left side as they entered the elevator. "I'm coming with you." Cross didn't argue. The elevator doors closed on the chaos below. In the sudden quiet, Harper could hear her own heartbeat. Too fast, too hard. The rhythm of panic she'd learned to control but never fully conquered. "Breathe," Dr. Reyes said quietly. "In for 4, out for 6. Harper followed the count automatically. Old training, the kind therapists taught soldiers who came back with more than physical scars. The elevator climbed. Nobody spoke. The Marines stood at parade rest, eyes forward, giving Harper the illusion of privacy in the cramped space. Major Cross broke the silence. "When we get to your room, I need 5 minutes of your time. After that, I'll post guards and make sure nobody else gets through. You have my word." Harper's voice came out rough. "I don't need guards." "With respect, Staff Sergeant, that's not your call anymore." Cross's tone was firm but not unkind. "You're under a national spotlight now. There are already death threats circulating online." Harper's head jerked up. "What?" "Some people are calling you a hero. Others are saying you're a crisis actor, that the whole thing was staged, that you're pushing some political agenda." Cross's expression was carved granite. "Social media is a cesspool. My team is monitoring it. You need protection whether you want it or not." The elevator opened on the 3rd floor. The Marines moved in formation, clearing the hallway with professional efficiency before Torres wheeled Harper back toward her room. Dr. Reyes hurried ahead to unlock the door. Inside, Cross dismissed everyone except Torres and Dr. Reyes. The door closed. Sudden silence felt like pressure against Harper's eardrums. Cross pulled a chair close to Harper's bed and sat down, her posture still military perfect. "I'm going to be direct because that's the only way I know how to operate. Sergeant Torres called me 6 hours ago and told me what happened. I ran your service record. I know about Helmand. I know about Firebase Viper. I know about the incident that earned you the Bronze Star." Harper's hands fisted in her lap. "That's classified." "Not to me." Cross leaned forward. "I also know you were medically discharged 3 years ago. Shrapnel damage, PTSD diagnosis, recommended for psychiatric evaluation. You disappeared after that. No forwarding address. No contact with your unit. No VA benefits claimed." "I didn't want them." "That's not how this works. You served your country. You earned those benefits." "I earned a discharge and a limp." Harper's voice was ice. "Everything else is charity." Cross studied her for a long moment. "You really believe that?" It wasn't a question. "What I believe doesn't matter." Harper met her eyes. "I appreciate what you did downstairs, but I don't need the Marine Corps fighting my battles. This isn't about what you need. It's about what's right." Cross pulled out her phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward Harper. "This video has 8 million views. It was posted 4 hours ago." Harper looked. The footage was shaky, filmed from someone's phone camera, but the audio was crystal clear. She watched herself launch across the diner, heard her own voice bark, "Down!" like she was back in Helmand shouting over mortar fire. Saw the moment the gun went off. Saw herself hit the floor, covering the Marine's body with her own. Saw the blood spreading across the tile. The comments section was a war zone. This woman is a hero. Someone get her a medal. Fake. Nobody moves that fast. Staged bullshit. She's a veteran. You can see it in the way she moves. Respect. Why didn't anyone else help? Cowards just stood there. I hope the hospital fires her for violating safety protocols. Harper looked away. Turn it off. Cross-pocketed her phone. You can't hide from this. The story's out. Your name is out. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in the country will be running features about the nurse who turned out to be a war hero. I'm not a hero. You saved Sergeant Torres's life. I did my job. Your job is nursing. My job, Harper said quietly, has always been keeping people alive. The uniform changes, the mission doesn't. Something shifted in Cross's expression. Recognition, maybe, or respect. I'm assigning a security detail. 2 Marines in rotation posted outside your room until you're discharged. After that, we'll reassess based on threat level. I didn't ask for this. You didn't ask to be attacked in a diner either. Cross stood. I'm not giving you a choice, Staff Sergeant. You're one of ours, and we protect our own. End of discussion. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, what you did today reminded a lot of people why we serve. You should be proud. I'm tired, Harper said. That's what I am. Cross nodded slowly. Get some rest. We'll talk again tomorrow. She left. Torres lingered by the door, uncertain. You too, Harper told him. Go home. See your family. Ma'am, I can't just... That's an order, Sergeant. Torres's mouth quirked in something almost like a smile. You're not my CO. Then consider it a strong suggestion from someone who outranks you in sheer stubbornness. Harper's voice softened. I'm fine. You did your job. Now go do something that makes you happy. Torres hesitated, then nodded. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. After he left, only Dr. Reyes remained. You need to eat something, the doctor said, and take your pain medication. I'm not hungry. Harper, I'm not. Harper's voice cracked. I'm not anything right now except completely overwhelmed and wishing everyone would just leave me alone. Dr. Reyes sat down in the chair Cross had vacated. I've worked with you for 3 years. In that time, I've watched you save dozens of lives. I've seen you handle trauma cases that would break most people. I've seen you work double shifts without complaint. She paused. What I've never seen is you accept help. I don't need help. Everyone needs help sometimes. That's not weakness. That's being human. Harper closed her eyes. The exhaustion was bone deep now, dragging at her like an anchor. I just want to go home. Tomorrow, after we run one more set of labs and make sure the wound isn't infected. Dr. Reyes stood, squeezed Harper's shoulder gently. Try to sleep. I'll make sure the nurses leave you alone unless it's critical. Alone in the quiet room, Harper stared at the ceiling and counted tiles again. 64. Same as before. Same as always. Predictable and safe and completely under control. Unlike everything else in her life. She must have dozed because the next thing she knew, darkness had fallen outside her window. The room was dim except for the glow of monitors. Her phone was buzzing on the side table, had been buzzing, she realized, for a while. Harper grabbed it, squinting at the screen. 47 new messages, most from numbers she didn't recognize. She scrolled through them mechanically. You're an inspiration. Thank you for your service. Fake news. Crisis actor. The hospital should fire you. I hope you sue them for everything they're worth. You're a disgrace to the uniform. Delete. 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 One message made her pause. It was from a name she hadn't seen in 3 years. Lieutenant Rebecca Nash. They'd served together at Firebase Viper, back when Harper still believed she could save everyone. Holy shit, Harper. Saw the video. Didn't know you were stateside. Call me. Harper's thumb hovered over the delete button. Then, on impulse she didn't fully understand, she hit dial instead. Nash answered on the second ring. Jesus Christ, Vale, you really know how to make an entrance. Wasn't intentional. Nothing about you is intentional. You just react and deal with consequences later. A pause. How bad are you hurt? 12 stitches. I'll live. That's not what I asked. Harper leaned back against the pillows. I'm fine, Beck. Still a terrible liar. Nash's voice softened. I tried to find you after you got out. You disappeared, changed your number, didn't file for benefits. It was like you wanted to vanish. I did. Why? Because every time I close my eyes, I see Firebase Viper burning. Because I still hear the screams of the Marines I couldn't save. Because living a quiet life in a small town where nobody knows what I've done is the only way I can breathe. Harper didn't say any of that. Just needed a fresh start. Well, that's shot to hell now. Nash exhaled. Look, I'm flying out tomorrow. Don't argue. I already booked the ticket. I'll be there by noon. Beck, Harper, shut up and let someone help you for once in your life. Nash's tone was firm. I'm coming. Deal with it. The call ended before Harper could protest. She set the phone down and stared at it like it might explode. The door opened. A Marine in dress blues stepped inside. One of Cross's guards, she assumed. Young, maybe 23, with the alert posture of someone taking their assignment seriously. Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. Says her name is Jessica Howell, reporter from the Pinewood Gazette. Harper's jaw tightened. Tell her no. She says it's important. Says she has information about the men who attacked the diner. That changed things. Harper pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest from her leg. Send her in, but you stay in the room. The Marine nodded and stepped aside. A woman in her early 30s entered, carrying a messenger bag and a wary expression. She had the look of someone who'd learned to navigate hostile environments, careful steps, eyes that tracked exits, a posture that suggested she could bolt if necessary. Ms. Vale, thank you for seeing me. Jessica Howell stayed near the door, respecting the space. I know you're probably sick of reporters. I was sick of them before I met any. Harper gestured to the chair. You said you have information. Jessica sat, pulling a tablet from her bag. I've been investigating a string of armed robberies in this county for the past 6 months. Same M.O., small businesses, rural locations, 3-man crew. The diner attack today matches the pattern. Harper's attention sharpened. The police know this? They do now. I sent Detective Morris my research this afternoon. Jessica swiped through files on her tablet. But here's what I didn't send him yet. I think I know who one of the attackers is. She turned the screen toward Harper. A grainy photo showed a young man, early 20s, thin face, nervous eyes. Tyler Brennan, Jessica said, age 22. Multiple arrests for drug possession, petty theft, and, this is the interesting part, he's Richard Brennan's nephew. The room went very cold. Harper stared at the photo. The twitchy gunman, the one who'd panicked, who'd looked like he was coming apart at the seams. You're sure? I pulled county records. Tyler's been in and out of rehab facilities Richard's been paying for. Last known address was his uncle's guest house. Jessica leaned forward. Here's what I'm thinking. Richard Brennan knew his nephew was involved in these robberies. When you got caught up in today's incident, Brennan didn't just see a liability. He saw a potential connection to his family. That's why he moved so fast to discredit you. He's trying to bury the whole story before anyone makes the link. Harper's mind was racing. Does Tyler know you identified him? I don't think so. I haven't published anything yet. Wanted to get your statement first. Don't. Harper's voice was sharp. If Tyler realizes he's been identified, he'll run, or worse, he'll eliminate witnesses. Jessica's eyes widened. You think he'd come after you? I think cornered animals do unpredictable things. Harper looked at the Marine guard. Get Major Cross. Now. The Marine stepped into the hallway, speaking quietly into his radio. Jessica was already typing on her tablet. I need to know, are you willing to go on record about what Brennan tried to do, about the attack, all of it? After we catch the men who did this, Harper met her eyes. Not before. I'm not giving them any reason to run. Major Cross arrived 4 minutes later, Torres at her heels. Harper filled them in quickly, watching Cross's expression darken with each detail. You're telling me the hospital COO's nephew is one of the shooters, Cross said flatly. That's what the evidence suggests, Jessica confirmed. I have documentation. Forward it to me. Everything you have. Cross was already on her phone. I'm calling this in to federal authorities. If there's a connection between Richard Brennan and an ongoing criminal enterprise, this just became a much bigger problem. Torres was staring at the photo of Tyler Brennan. This kid was maybe 5 feet from me. I looked him in the eyes right before the shooting started. His voice was tight. He was scared, really scared. I thought it was nerves, but now you're thinking he recognized you as military and knew how badly this could go. Harper finished. Which is why he panicked. And why his uncle tried so hard to make you the villain, Cross added. If the story stays focused on your recklessness, nobody looks too closely at who the attackers actually were. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture uglier than anyone had anticipated. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and went pale. Oh no. What? Someone just posted on social media that they saw Tyler Brennan at a gas station outside town 2 hours ago. Jessica's hands were shaking. The post has 300 shares already. If Tyler sees this, he'll know we're closing in. Cross was already moving. I need to coordinate with local PD. Torres, you stay with Vale. Nobody gets in or out of this room without clearance. She strode out, phone pressed to her ear. Jessica gathered her things quickly. I need to get this story filed before... The lights went out. Not just in Harper's room. The entire floor plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after 3 seconds, bathing everything in dim red. Torres had his sidearm out instantly, positioning himself between Harper and the door. Stay down. Harper was already moving, swinging her legs off the bed despite the spike of pain. That's not a power failure. Someone cut the main line. How do you know? Because the emergency lights came on too fast. Building systems have a 3 to 5 second delay when power's lost naturally. This was instant. Harper grabbed her crutch. Someone flipped a switch. Jessica's face was white. You think... The fire alarm began shrieking. Torres swore. That's a diversion. Classic tactical move, create chaos, move during the confusion. Harper's military training was screaming at her. We need to move. Now. Ma'am, you can barely walk. I can run if I have to. Harper's voice was ice. And right now, we might have to. That alarm's going to empty every room on this floor. Medical patients in hallways, nurses trying to evacuate, total chaos. Perfect cover for someone looking to finish what they started. The door burst open. The Marine Guard from earlier stood there, weapon drawn. We're evacuating. Orders from Major Cross. There's been a credible threat called in to hospital security. Torres grabbed Harper's arm, steadying her. Where's the Major? Coordinating with local PD on the ground floor. She said to get Ms. Vale to the parking garage, north stairwell. Extraction teams waiting. They moved fast, Torres and the guard flanking Harper while Jessica followed close behind. The hallway was already filling with confused patients and staff. The fire alarm made communication nearly impossible. People were shouting questions nobody could answer. Harper's legs screamed with every step, but she forced herself to keep pace. Her eyes scanned constantly, looking for threats in the chaos. Military training said attackers would strike during moments of maximum confusion, when targets were mobile and vulnerable. They reached the stairwell door. The guard pushed through first, weapon raised, clearing the space. Move! The stairs descended in a tight spiral, emergency lighting casting everything in blood-red shadows. Harper gripped the railing with one hand, crutch in the other, taking steps as fast as she dared. Behind her, Jessica was breathing hard, struggling to keep up. 2 floors down, Torres froze. Wait. What? Someone's coming up. Fast. Harper heard it too, footsteps echoing from below, moving with purpose. Torres aimed his weapon down the stairwell. Identify yourself. Marines, a familiar voice called back. Staff Sergeant Carson, ma'am. Major Cross sent us to reinforce. 2 Marines rounded the corner below, both in tactical gear. Harper recognized one of them from the formation in the lobby earlier. Torres didn't lower his weapon. What's the Major's call sign? The lead Marine, Carson, answered without hesitation. Iron Lady. Now can we move? We've got a situation developing outside. They continued down, now a group of 7 moving in tight formation. Harper's breathing was labored, pain radiating from her leg in waves. She could feel blood seeping through the bandages, stitches probably torn. Dr. Reyes was going to kill her. if she survived the night. They hit the ground floor. Carson led them through a maintenance corridor Harper had never seen before, avoiding the main hallways. Smart, less exposure. "What's happening outside?" Torres asked. Protesters showed up 20 minutes ago. Two groups, one supporting Ms. Vale, one saying she's a crisis actor. It's getting ugly, shoving, fights breaking out. Local PD is trying to separate them, but Carson stopped at a metal door. This leads to the parking garage. Extraction vehicles waiting at the north exit. He pushed through. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet after the chaos of the hospital. Their footsteps echoed off concrete. Somewhere in the distance, Harper could hear shouting, the protesters Carson had mentioned, probably on the other side of the building. A black SUV sat idling near the exit ramp, windows tinted. "That's our ride," Carson said. They were 10 feet away when Harper's instincts screamed danger. She grabbed Torres's arm. "Stop!" "Ma'am?" "Something's wrong." Harper scanned the garage. Too quiet. Too convenient. "Where's the driver? Why isn't anyone visible in the vehicle?" Carson's expression shifted. Just a fraction, but enough. Harper's blood turned to ice. "Get back! Now!" She threw herself backward, tackling Jessica to the ground just as the SUV's rear doors exploded outward. 3 men poured out, faces covered, weapons raised. The same 3 men from the diner. Torres and the other Marine opened fire instantly. The stairwell door Marines, Carson and his partner, spun and leveled their weapons at Torres. Traitors. Harper rolled behind a concrete pillar, dragging Jessica with her. "Stay down!" Gunfire erupted in the confined space, deafening and chaotic. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like strobe lights. Concrete chips exploded as bullets struck pillars. The smell of gunpowder choked the air. Torres took cover behind a vehicle, returning fire. The other loyal Marine, Harper didn't know his name, went down hard, shot in the shoulder. He dragged himself behind a truck tire, still conscious, still fighting. Carson and his partner had Harper pinned. The 3 diner attackers were advancing, using the SUV as cover. 6 hostiles, 2 friendlies down or compromised, 1 injured reporter. Harper's mind calculated odds in half a heartbeat. Not good. "We need to move," she shouted at Jessica. "When I say go, run for that door, the one marked emergency exit. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" "Not your problem. Go!" Jessica bolted. Harper grabbed a chunk of broken concrete and hurled it at the nearest hostile. It struck him in the face mask, not enough to hurt, but enough to distract. She launched herself forward despite her screaming leg, tackling him low and hard. They went down together. Harper drove her elbow into his throat, felt cartilage crunch. He gurgled and went limp. She grabbed his weapon, a Glock 19, and rolled behind the SUV. Muscle memory took over. Check the magazine. 15 rounds, safety off. Assess threats. Carson was advancing on Torres's position. The other traitor Marine was circling around, trying to flank. The 2 remaining diner attackers, including Tyler Brennan, were running toward the exit where Jessica had disappeared. Harper made a choice. She stepped out from cover and fired 3 rounds at Carson. Center mass, textbook. He went down, body armor absorbing the impact but knocking him flat. Torres used the distraction to take out the second traitor with a headshot that ended the threat permanently. But the diner attackers were gone, chasing Jessica into the hospital depths. Harper limped toward the emergency exit, weapon raised, every nerve on fire. Behind her, Torres was shouting something, but she couldn't process it. All she could see was a civilian reporter running for her life because Harper had made her a target. She pushed through the door into a maintenance corridor. Emergency lights flickered overhead. The sound of running footsteps echoed from ahead. Harper followed, her bad leg barely holding weight anymore. Blood soaked through her scrubs. Her vision was starting to tunnel from pain and blood loss. Didn't matter. Couldn't matter. She'd saved Torres in the diner. She'd be damned if she let Jessica die in a basement corridor. The hallway opened into a larger space, the hospital's mechanical room. Massive HVAC units hummed. Pipes ran everywhere, perfect place for an ambush. Harper moved slowly, methodically, clearing corners the way she'd been trained. The Glock felt natural in her hands, an old friend she'd hoped never to need again. A sound to her left. She spun and fired. The bullet sparked off a pipe. A figure ducked behind an electrical panel. "I don't want to hurt anyone." Tyler Brennan's voice, high and panicked. We just wanted the money. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. You opened fire in a diner, Harper called back, keeping her weapon trained on his position. You shot at a Marine. You don't get to claim innocent intentions. It was him, Tyler's voice cracked. Marcus said it would be easy. Said we'd just scare people, take the cash, get out. But then why did you do that? Harper could hear it in his voice. The same fear she'd seen in his eyes at the diner. This wasn't a hardened criminal. This was a kid in over his head, making increasingly desperate choices. Didn't make him less dangerous. Where's Jessica? Harper demanded. Who? The woman who was with me. I don't know. Marcus was chasing her. A sob. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't want anyone to die. Then put the gun down and surrender. I can't. My uncle, Your uncle sold you out the second this went public. Harper's voice was hard. Richard Brennan tried to destroy my life to protect his reputation. You think he's going to protect yours? Silence. Then Tyler stepped out from behind the panel, gun in hand but pointed at the floor. His mask was off. His face was young, scared, and soaked with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Harper kept her weapon trained on him. Drop it, slowly. Tyler's hand shook. For a moment, Harper thought he'd comply. Then a gunshot cracked from deeper in the mechanical room. Tyler's chest exploded. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Harper dove behind a HVAC unit as more shots tore through the space where she'd been standing. She landed hard, her injured leg buckling completely. The Glock skittered across the floor. She was unarmed, injured, pinned, and somewhere in this maze of machinery, Marcus, whoever the hell that was hunting her. Footsteps approached slowly, deliberately, boots on concrete. Harper's hand closed around a piece of metal pipe that had fallen from the ceiling. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The footsteps stopped. You should have stayed in your booth, a man's voice said. Cold, professional, nothing like Tyler's panic or the stocky robber's rage. Should have minded your business, drunk your coffee, gone home. Harper didn't respond. Talking gave away position. But you just had to be a hero, just had to save the day. The voice was moving, circling. Now you've made everything complicated. Attracted attention. Got people asking questions. He was getting closer. Harper gripped the pipe tighter, controlling her breathing. One chance. She'd get one chance. This could have been clean, the voice continued. Simple robberies, small towns, fly under the radar. But you... He stepped around the HVAC unit. Harper swung the pipe with everything she had. It connected with his knee. Bone crunched. The man, Marcus, screamed and collapsed. Harper lunged for the Glock, her fingers closing around the grip just as Marcus raised his own weapon. They fired simultaneously. Harper's shot took him in the shoulder. His shot went wide, sparking off metal somewhere behind her. Marcus tried to aim again. Harper fired twice more. Center mass. He went down and stayed down. The mechanical room fell silent except for the hum of machinery and Harper's ragged breathing. She pulled herself upright using the HVAC unit, her entire body screaming in protest. Her leg was useless now, the pain white-hot and all-consuming. Jessica, her voice echoed. Jessica, where are you? A weak response from somewhere to the right. Here. Harper limped in that direction, using the pipe as a makeshift cane since she'd lost her crutch somewhere in the chaos. She found Jessica huddled behind a water heater, unhurt but shaking. It's over, Harper said. You're safe. Jessica looked at the Glock in Harper's hand, then at Harper's blood-soaked scrubs. You're not. Harper's vision was graying at the edges, blood loss catching up. Yeah, I noticed. The door burst open. Torres rushed in, weapon raised, 3 more Marines behind him. He took one look at the scene. Tyler's body. Marcus's body. Harper swaying on her feet, and his face went white. Get a medic! Now! Harper tried to say something, but her legs gave out. Torres caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her carefully. Stay with me, Staff Sergeant, he was saying, his voice tight. You don't get to check out after all this. Harper's eyes were closing. Did we get them all? Yeah, we got them. Torres's hand pressed against her leg wound, trying to stem the bleeding. But you're bleeding out. Jesus, Harper. What did you do? My job, Harper whispered. Then darkness took her. The last thing she heard was Torres screaming for help and the sound of boots hitting concrete at a dead run. When Harper woke again, she wasn't in a hospital room. She was in a military medical facility, surrounded by equipment she recognized from deployment, and standing at the foot of her bed was a woman in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 federal agents with badges that read FBI. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Ms. Vale, welcome back. We need to talk about Richard Brennan, his nephew, and a criminal organization that's been operating in 6 states for the past 2 years. She pulled out a chair and sat down. And you're going to help us take them all down. Harper's mouth was dry as sand. She tried to sit up, but leather restraints held her wrists to the bed rails. Not tight enough to hurt, just enough to make a point. What the hell is this? Her voice came out cracked, raw. The woman in the suit raised a hand, and one of the FBI agents stepped forward to unbuckle the restraints. Precaution. You were combative when they brought you in, tried to fight the surgical team. Harper's memories of the past few hours were fragments. Torres shouting, hands pressing against her leg, the mechanical room spinning, then nothing. She looked down. Her right leg was heavily bandaged, an IV line ran into her arm, and she was wearing a hospital gown that wasn't from Mercy Ridge. Where am I? Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Trauma Wing. The woman pulled out a badge. Special Agent Diane Chen, FBI. We've been investigating a multi-state robbery ring for 18 months. Your incident at the diner just gave us the break we needed. Harper's head was pounding. I don't know anything about a robbery ring. You killed 2 members of it 4 hours ago. Chen's tone was matter-of-fact. Marcus Delacroix and Tyler Brennan. Delacroix was the operational leader. Tyler was the weak link we'd been trying to exploit for months. The memories came back in a rush. The mechanical room, the gunfire. Tyler's face before Marcus shot him. Tyler tried to surrender, Harper said. Marcus executed him. We know. We recovered the security footage. Chen pulled out a tablet, swiped to a video file. This is from the hospital's maintenance camera system, shows everything. Harper watched herself disarm Tyler, watched the negotiation, watched Marcus's bullet tear through the kid's chest, watched herself fight for her life with a piece of pipe and a stolen weapon. You were military law enforcement? Harper asked, studying Chen's posture. Marine Corps CID, 12 years. Now FBI. Chen set the tablet aside. Which is why I know exactly what you did down there, and why you did it. You didn't panic. You didn't freeze. You ran toward the gunfire to protect a civilian. She was my responsibility. Jessica Howell is fine, by the way, shaken but unharmed. She's already filed her story, front page of tomorrow's Washington Post. Chen leaned forward. Here's where we are. Marcus Delacroix was running a crew that hit 47 locations across Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Tennessee. Small operations, rural targets, always 3-man teams. Total take, approximately $2.3 million over 2 years. Harper processed that. How does Richard Brennan fit in? That's the question. Chen pulled up another file. Brennan's financials show regular cash deposits that don't match his salary. His nephew Tyler was in debt, drug problems, gambling, collection agencies threatening lawsuits. Then 6 months ago, Tyler's debts vanished overnight, paid in full, cash. Brennan bankrolled his nephew's participation. That's our theory, but we can't prove it without testimony, and Tyler's dead. Chen's expression hardened. Brennan's already lawyered up. Has 3 attorneys from one of DC's top firms. They're claiming he had no knowledge of his nephew's activities and that any financial assistance was familial charity. Harper's jaw tightened. He tried to destroy my career to bury the connection. Which is why we need you. Chen stood, pacing. Tomorrow morning, Richard Brennan will hold a press conference. He's going to claim you're unstable, that you have untreated PTSD, that you endangered patients and staff with your reckless vigilante behavior. His lawyers have already filed a civil suit against you for defamation. You said some unflattering things about him on camera. He threatened me, tried to force me to sign a settlement. We believe you, but without corroboration, it's your word against his. Chen stopped pacing, met Harper's eyes. We need you to testify. Federal grand jury. Tell them everything. The diner, the hospital, the pressure, the settlement. We'll build a conspiracy case, connect Brennan to the robbery ring through financial records and testimony. Harper stared at her. You want me to be your star witness? I want you to help us put a corrupt hospital executive and his criminal enterprise behind bars. Chen's voice was steel. This isn't just about the robberies. We've uncovered evidence that Brennan's been embezzling from Mercy Ridge for years. Fake vendor contracts, kickbacks, insurance fraud. He's stolen millions, used that money to fund his nephew's operation and line his own pockets. The door opened. Major Cross walked in, still in uniform, her expression grim. Major, Chen acknowledged, I was just briefing Staff Sergeant Vale. I heard. Cross moved to Harper's bedside. How are you feeling? Like I got shot, beaten, and dragged through hell. Harper met her eyes. How bad is the leg? You tore every stitch, reopened the wound, and lost enough blood that you needed a transfusion. The surgeons had to go back in, clean everything out, resuture. Cross's tone was clinical, but Harper could hear the anger underneath. You also cracked 2 ribs when you tackled that reporter, and you have a concussion from when you hit the concrete. The doctors say you're lucky to be alive. Doesn't feel lucky. It never does. Cross glanced at Chen. I need a minute with my Marine. Chen nodded and left with her agents. The door closed, leaving Harper and Cross alone. Cross pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. I failed you. Harper blinked. What? Carson and Vasquez, the 2 Marines who turned, they were on my detail. I vetted them personally. Cross's hands were fisted on her knees. They were compromised. Delacroix had something on Carson, photos of him with underage girls apparently, used it to flip him. Vasquez was dirty from the start, just in it for money. That's not your fault. It's absolutely my fault. I put you in danger by assigning security I hadn't properly screened. Cross's voice was rough. You could have died because I trusted the wrong people. Harper had spent 3 years avoiding exactly this. Connection, attachment, the weight of other people's guilt. But looking at Cross now, she recognized the expression. Had worn it herself after Firebase Viper. I made the choice to go after Jessica, Harper said quietly. Nobody forced me. That's on me. You shouldn't have had to make that choice. I've been making choices like that my whole career. It's who I am. Harper paused. What happened to Torres? Sergeant Torres is fine. Minimal injuries. He's in the waiting room right now, refusing to leave until he sees you. Cross's expression softened slightly. He's filed a commendation for you with Marine Corps headquarters. Bronze Star with Valor, 2nd award. Harper's chest tightened. I don't want another medal. What you want isn't relevant. What you did, protecting a civilian, engaging multiple armed hostiles while injured, eliminating threats, that's exactly what the Bronze Star recognizes. Cross stood. The FBI needs you to testify. I need you to understand what you're walking into. Brennan's attorneys will try to destroy you. They'll dig up every mistake you ever made, every moment of weakness. They'll weaponize your PTSD diagnosis, your discharge, your choice to disappear. I know. Do you? Cross's eyes were hard. They'll put you on the stand and make you relive Firebase Viper in front of a courtroom full of strangers. They'll question every decision you made that day. They'll imply you're damaged, unstable, a danger to yourself and others. Harper had already thought about this, had run the scenarios. If I don't testify, Brennan walks. The robbery ring gets dismantled, maybe? But the man who funded it, who tried to silence witnesses, who embezzled millions, he disappears into his mansion with his lawyers and his money. That's correct? Then there's no choice. Harper met Cross's gaze. I testify. Cross studied her for a long moment. You're stronger than you think you are. I'm tired. There's a difference. The strongest people I know are the ones who keep fighting when they're tired. Cross moved toward the door, paused. Rebecca Nash is here, by the way. She flew in this morning when she heard what happened. Want me to send her in? Harper's throat tightened. Yeah, okay. Cross left. A minute later, Rebecca Nash walked through the door. 3 years hadn't changed her much. Same sharp eyes, same confident stride, same scar along her jawline from an IED fragment in Helmand. She wore civilian clothes now, jeans, leather jacket, but she moved like military. She took one look at Harper and shook her head. "You're an idiot." "Good to see you too, Beck." Nash pulled up a chair, dropping into it with familiar ease. "Seriously, you disappear for 3 years, don't return calls, don't file for benefits, and the next time I see you, you're all over the news for tackling gunmen and bleeding out in a basement. What the hell, Harper?" "Wasn't planned." "Nothing about you is planned. You just react and deal with the fallout." Nash leaned back, studying her. "I read the FBI reports, talked to Major Cross. You killed 2 men. They were trying to kill me." "I know. I'm not judging." Nash's expression was complicated. "I'm asking if you're okay." Harper didn't answer immediately. Was she okay? She'd spent 3 years running from her past, trying to forget Firebase Viper, trying to be someone who didn't carry weapons or calculate threat assessments. And in 48 hours, all of that had been stripped away, revealing the person she'd tried to bury. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought I could just be a nurse, help people in a normal way. But when it mattered, I didn't think. I just moved, like I never left." "Because you didn't." Nash's voice was gentle. "You can take the Marine out of the war zone, but you can't take the war zone out of the Marine. It's in your blood, Harper. The training, the instincts, the need to protect people. That doesn't go away because you changed your address." "I didn't want it anymore." "Want doesn't matter. You are who you are." Nash leaned forward. "After I got out, I tried the same thing. Moved to Seattle, got a job in tech, pretended I'd never worn a uniform. Lasted 6 months before I lost my mind. Now, I work private security, train corporate executives on crisis response. It's not combat, but it uses the skills. Lets me be who I actually am, instead of pretending to be someone I'm not." Harper stared at the ceiling. "The FBI wants me to testify against Brennan, publicly, in front of cameras and journalists and attorneys who are going to tear me apart." "Then you tear them apart first." Nash's tone hardened. "You're a decorated combat veteran. You saved lives. You stopped criminals. Don't let some corrupt bureaucrat and his lawyers rewrite that narrative. They're going to bring up Firebase Viper." Nash went very still. "What happened there wasn't your fault. Tell that to the families of the 8 Marines who died." "Harper, I was the senior medic. I made the call to evacuate the wounded first instead of reinforcing the perimeter. Marcus and his squad stayed behind to cover us, and they got overrun." Harper's voice was flat, reciting facts she'd memorized like a confession. 8 men dead because I prioritized the wrong objective." "You saved 14 lives that day," Nash said fiercely. 14 Marines who would have died if you hadn't gotten them out. The firebase was going to fall no matter what. Intelligence had already confirmed we were outnumbered 5-1. You made the only choice that saved anyone. The review board didn't see it that way. The review board gave you a Bronze Star and recommended you for promotion. Your commander wrote you up for valor. Nash grabbed Harper's hand, forcing eye contact. You've carried that guilt for 3 years, and it's eating you alive. But those 8 Marines didn't die because you failed. They died because war is chaos, and sometimes good people don't make it home. Harper's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Hadn't cried since the day she received her discharge papers. The door opened again. Agent Chen stepped in, followed by a man in a dark suit carrying a briefcase. Ms. Vale, this is Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Torres, no relation to Sergeant Torres. He'll be prosecuting the case against Richard Brennan. Chen gestured to the man. He needs to prep you for testimony. Nash stood. I'll give you space. Stay, Harper said quickly. Then to Chen, she stays. I want a witness. Chen nodded. Fine by me. Michael Torres sat down, opening his briefcase with practiced efficiency. Ms. Vale, I'll be direct. This case is complicated. We're charging Richard Brennan with conspiracy, embezzlement, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The robbery ring is separate but connected. We're using RICO statutes to link Brennan's financial support of his nephew to the criminal enterprise. What do you need from me? Everything. Timeline of events at the diner. Timeline of events at the hospital. Every interaction you had with Richard Brennan. The settlement he tried to force you to sign. Any witnesses who can corroborate. Torres pulled out a legal pad. And I need to know about your military service. The defense will use it to paint you as unstable. I need to get ahead of that. Harper's jaw tightened. My service record is classified in parts. I have clearance. Major Cross has already provided me with the relevant files. Torres met her eyes. Firebase Viper. February 2019. You were the senior combat medic during a coordinated Taliban assault. 8 Marines KIA, 14 wounded. You received the Bronze Star for evacuating the wounded under fire. Nash's hand found Harper's shoulder, a silent anchor. There was an investigation, Torres continued. Some question about your decision-making during the evacuation, but you were cleared of wrongdoing and commended for your actions. The defense will twist it, Harper said. They'll say I make reckless decisions under pressure, that I can't be trusted. Then we control the narrative. Torres's voice was sharp. You're a decorated veteran who acted on training and instinct to protect lives. Everything you did at the diner and the hospital was consistent with that training. You assessed threats, eliminated them, and minimized civilian casualties. I killed 2 men. You defended yourself and others against armed criminals who'd already attempted murder. Torres leaned forward. Ms. Vale, I've prosecuted hundreds of cases. I know when someone's guilty and when someone's a victim. You're a victim who fought back. Don't let Brennan's attorneys make you forget that. The door opened without warning. A nurse entered, late 30s, efficient movements. Ms. Vale, I need to check your vitals and change your bandages. Torres stood. We'll continue this later. Get some rest. After he left, the nurse worked quickly, checking monitors and IV lines. When she peeled back the bandage on Harper's leg, Nash inhaled sharply. The wound was brutal, a long, ragged tear held together by neat surgical stitches. Angry red tissue surrounded it, still swollen from trauma. Healing well, the nurse said clinically. No signs of infection. You'll have significant scarring, but mobility should return to about 85% with proper physical therapy. Harper had scars already. What was one more? After the nurse left, Nash sat down again. They're putting you back together just to throw you to the wolves. I can handle it. I know you can. Doesn't mean you should have to. Nash pulled out her phone, scrolled through something. Have you seen the news coverage? No. You're everywhere. National headlines. Social media's on fire. Half calling you a hero, half calling you a plant, some claiming the whole thing was staged. Nash turned her phone toward Harper. But there's something else. Something you should see. The screen showed a video with over 20 million views. Harper pressed play. It was footage from the hospital lobby, the moment Major Cross and her Marines had saluted Harper. But someone had edited it, adding context. Harper's service record, her Bronze Star citation, details about Firebase Viper. A voiceover explained what combat medics did, the conditions they worked under, the lives they saved. Then it cut to the diner footage, showed Harper launching herself across the room in slow motion. Cut to interviews with people who'd been there. Donna the waitress, the contractor, an older woman who'd been hiding under a table. She didn't hesitate, Donna said, tears in her eyes. She just moved, like she'd done it 1,000 times. The contractor. That Marine would be dead if she hadn't acted. No question. The older woman. I've never seen anything like it. She was terrifying and beautiful at the same time, like watching a guardian angel with a mean streak. The video ended with Harper's hospital photo, exhausted, blood-stained scrubs, but alive. The caption read, "This is what a hero looks like." Harper handed the phone back. That's dangerous. Why? Because people will expect me to be that person, to live up to some impossible standard. Harper's voice was tight. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to watch a kid die. That's exactly what makes you a hero, Nash said quietly. You didn't want glory. You didn't calculate the risks. You just did what needed to be done because nobody else would. Before Harper could respond, the door burst open. Torres, Sergeant Torres, practically fell through, his uniform rumpled, his face showing 3 days without sleep. Ma'am, they said you were awake. He stopped, taking in the scene. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You're not interrupting. Harper gestured him in. Come here. Torres approached hesitantly. Up close, Harper could see the toll the past 48 hours had taken. His hands were shaking slightly. His eyes were too bright. "Are you okay?" he asked. Harper almost laughed. "I'm alive. That's about all I can guarantee right now." "I should have—" Torres's voice cracked. "In the garage. I should have seen it coming. Should have protected you better." "Stop." Harper's voice was firm. "You did everything right. Carson and Vasquez were compromised before you ever met them. You couldn't have known. But you almost died. I've almost died before. Comes with the territory." Harper held his gaze. "You saved my life in that mechanical room. Got me medical attention before I bled out. So if we're keeping score, we're even." Torres wiped his eyes quickly. "Major Cross said you're testifying against Brennan. That's the plan. I want to testify too. Tell them what he did, how he tried to silence you." Torres's jaw set. That son of a bitch doesn't get to walk away from this. Nash was watching the exchange with an expression Harper couldn't quite read. "You've got a good one here," she said to Torres. "She saved your life, you saved hers. That's a bond that doesn't break." Torres nodded. "Semper Fi, ma'am." "Semper Fi," Nash echoed. The intercom crackled. "Staff Sergeant Vale, you have a visitor. Major Cross with a guest." Harper frowned. "Who?" The door opened. Cross entered, followed by someone Harper never expected to see. Dr. Reyes from Mercy Ridge Medical Center. The doctor looked exhausted. Her professional composure cracked around the edges. She stopped just inside the doorway, taking in Harper's injuries. "Jesus Christ, Harper." "Dr. Reyes, what are you doing here? What do you think?" Reyes moved closer, her eyes cataloging the IV lines, the monitors, the bandages. "I heard what happened. Flew up this morning." She glanced at Cross. "The major was kind enough to get me clearance." Harper's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Reyes pulled up a chair, sitting down heavily. "Because someone needs to tell you that what Richard Brennan did was unconscionable, and because I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For not seeing it sooner. For not protecting you from him." Reyes's hands were fisted in her lap. "I knew Brennan was corrupt. We all did. The fake vendor contracts, the budget discrepancies. But I looked the other way because fighting him meant risking my career. And while I was playing politics, he was targeting you." "You didn't know about Tyler." "I should have." Reyes met her eyes. "After the diner incident, Brennan moved too fast, tried too hard to bury the story. That should have been a red flag. But I was so focused on the hospital's liability that I didn't question his motives." Harper absorbed that. "What's happening at Mercy Ridge now?" "Chaos." Reyes's laugh was bitter. "The board suspended Brennan pending investigation. Half the staff is being interviewed by FBI agents. The media is camped outside. Patients are transferring to other facilities because they don't trust us anymore." She paused. "And the nurses in the ER, your colleagues, they're furious. They want to know why nobody stood up for you." "I didn't ask anyone to stand up for me." "That's the problem. You never ask for anything. You just work your shifts, save lives, and disappear." Reyes leaned forward. "But people noticed, Harper. The nurses saw how you handled trauma cases nobody else wanted to touch. How you stayed calm during codes. How you mentored the new grads even though you were exhausted. You were the best nurse we had, and Brennan tried to destroy you." The words hit harder than Harper expected. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible, and it turned out people had seen her anyway. "The staff took a vote," Reyes continued. "Unanimous. If you'll come back after all this is over, we want you as our ER supervisor. Better pay, better hours, full benefits, and a written guarantee that you'll never face retaliation for doing the right thing." Harper stared at her. "I'm not management material. You led Marines in combat. You can lead nurses in an ER." Reyes stood. "Think about it. No pressure. But know that you have a place at Mercy Ridge if you want it." After Reyes left, the room fell silent. Nash broke it first. "That's one hell of an offer." "It's insane," Harper muttered. "I'm a per diem nurse with a limp and a PTSD diagnosis. I'm not supervisor material." "You're a Bronze Star recipient who saved lives under fire and took down a criminal organization while recovering from surgery," Torres said. "If that's not leadership, I don't know what is." Harper's head was spinning. 24 hours ago, she'd been a nobody nurse trying to stay invisible. Now she had job offers, medal commendations, federal prosecutors wanting her testimony, and a media circus treating her like some kind of folk hero. The door opened again. This time it was Agent Chen with 2 U.S. Marshals. Harper's stomach dropped. What's happening? Richard Brennan's attorneys just filed an emergency motion claiming you're a flight risk and demanding you be placed under house arrest pending trial. Chen's expression was thunderous. It's bullshit legal maneuvering, but the judge granted a hearing. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I can barely walk. Where exactly do they think I'm going to run to? Doesn't matter, it's about optics. They want you looking like a criminal in front of the cameras. Chen gestured to the marshals. These gentlemen are here to ensure you make it to the hearing safely. You're technically in federal protective custody now. Nash shot to her feet. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. Brennan's pulling every string he has left. His attorneys are connected, former federal prosecutors, political connections, friends in high places. Chen's jaw was tight. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. Harper looked at the marshals, both professional, both armed, both treating her like she was simultaneously a victim and a threat. The irony wasn't lost on her. Fine, she said. What do I need to do? Rest tonight. Tomorrow morning we transport you to the courthouse. You'll give a preliminary statement to the judge, answer questions under oath. After that, we prep for the grand jury. After Chen and the marshals left, Torres and Nash remained. This is insane, Torres muttered. They're treating you like you committed a crime. It's procedure, Harper said, though the words tasted like ash. They have to protect the integrity of the case. Nash was pacing. Brennan's scared. That's why he's lashing out. He knows if you testify, his entire defense collapses. Then I testify. Harper's voice was steel. I didn't survive Helmand Province and Firebase Viper and 3 years of running from my past just to let some corrupt bureaucrat silence me. Torres smiled grimly. There's the Marine I know. The night passed slowly. Harper dozed fitfully, waking every hour to nurses checking vitals or marshals changing shifts outside her door. Her dreams were fragments, the diner, the garage, the mechanical room, all bleeding together into a nightmare collage where she couldn't tell past from present. At 600, a nurse woke her for pre-transport prep. At 700, Agent Chen arrived with clothes, a simple dress, conservative and professional. At 7:30, the marshals briefed her on security protocols. At 800, they wheeled her out of Walter Reed in a wheelchair, her legs still too damaged for walking. Camera flashes exploded like artillery fire. Reporters screamed questions she didn't answer. The marshals formed a protective cordon, moving her toward an armored vehicle. Torres and Nash were there, both dressed in civilian clothes but standing at parade rest like they were in uniform. Cross stood with them, her expression carved granite. We'll be at the courthouse, Cross called. You're not alone! The convoy moved through D.C. traffic with police escort. Harper watched the city slide past, familiar and foreign at once. She'd been to the Capitol exactly twice during her military service, both times for ceremonies she'd tried to forget. The courthouse was a fortress, concrete and glass, surrounded by barriers and armed guards. More cameras, more reporters, more chaos. Inside, the marshals led her through security and up to a private waiting room. Agent Chen was already there with Michael Torres, the attorney. Here's what's going to happen, Torres said without preamble. The judge will ask you to state your name, confirm your understanding of the proceedings, and provide a brief account of your interaction with Richard Brennan. Keep it factual. Don't editorialize. Answer only what's asked. What about Brennan's attorneys? They'll try to rattle you, imply you're unstable, question your credibility. Torres met her eyes. Don't take the bait. Stay calm. Tell the truth. That's all you need to do. At 08:55, they wheeled Harper into the courtroom. It was smaller than she expected, wood paneling, high ceiling, the smell of old paper and nervous sweat. The gallery was packed with reporters, spectators, and faces Harper didn't recognize. Then she saw Brennan. He sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, flanked by 3 attorneys who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for corporate law. His expression was calm, almost bored, like this was a minor inconvenience. When his eyes met Harper's, he smiled. The rage that burned through her was white-hot and immediate. This man had tried to destroy her, had funded criminals, had gotten his own nephew killed through his corruption, and he had the audacity to smile. Harper forced herself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember she was a Marine and Marines didn't break under pressure. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every legal trick in the book. All rise, the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Everyone stood except Harper, who remained in her wheelchair. Judge Morrison took her seat, reviewed some documents, then looked directly at Harper. Ms. Vale, can you state your full name for the record? Harper Elizabeth Vale. And you understand you're here to provide testimony regarding your interactions with Richard Brennan? Yes, Your Honor. Proceed. Harper took a breath and began. She recounted the diner attack, the hospital confrontation, the settlement Brennan tried to force her to sign, kept it factual, kept it clean. When she finished, Brennan's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Harrison Reed, stood. Your Honor, may I ask the witness some questions? Briefly, Mr. Reed. Reed approached Harper like a shark circling prey. Ms. Vale, you have a history of PTSD, correct? I was diagnosed after my discharge, yes. And you chose not to seek treatment through VA services, correct? I chose to handle it privately. By handling it privately, you mean you self-medicated with isolation and avoidance? Reed's tone was polite venom. You disappeared from your unit, cut off contact with fellow veterans, and deliberately concealed your military background from your employer? Harper's hands fisted. I wanted a fresh start. A fresh start that involved lying about who you were? I never lied. I just didn't volunteer information. Ms. Vale, isn't it true that individuals with untreated PTSD often experience flashbacks, hypervigilance, and inappropriate aggressive responses to perceived threats? Objection, Torres called. The witness's medical history is irrelevant to the charges against Mr. Brennan. Judge Morrison looked thoughtful. I'll allow it. The witness may answer. Harper met Reed's eyes. I have PTSD. I manage it. It doesn't make me unstable. But it does affect your judgment, doesn't it? Your ability to assess situations rationally? Reed leaned closer. When you threw yourself in front of that Marine at the diner, were you acting rationally, or were you experiencing a combat flashback? I was preventing a murder. Or you were reliving a past trauma and projecting it onto the present situation. Reed's voice was silk. Ms. Vale, how many people did you kill during your military service? The courtroom went silent. Harper's vision tunneled. Her heart rate spiked. She could feel the panic clawing at her edges, the way it always did when someone asked the wrong question. I was a medic, she said quietly. My job was to save lives. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Reed smiled like he'd won something. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Morrison studied Harper for a long moment. Ms. Vale, you're free to go. The court finds no evidence that you're a flight risk. Protective custody is maintained, but house arrest is denied. Brennan's attorneys erupted in protest. The judge silenced them with a look. As the marshals wheeled Harper out, Brennan leaned over to whisper something to Reed. Both men were smiling. They thought they'd won. Outside, the media circus was worse. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting, protesters waving signs both supporting and condemning her. Torres and Nash appeared at her sides like bodyguards. Cross was there too, along with 6 Marines in dress uniform forming a protective corridor. They were loading Harper into the transport vehicle when someone in the crowd screamed, "Murderer!" A bottle flew through the air, smashing against the vehicle inches from Harper's head. Glass exploded. The marshals reacted instantly, shields up, pushing the crowd back. More objects flew, rocks, trash. Someone threw a brick that shattered a window. "Get her out of here!" Cross shouted. The vehicle peeled away from the curb, tires smoking. Through the rear window, Harper watched the riot developing, protesters clashing, police moving in, chaos consuming the courthouse steps. "Jesus Christ," one of the marshals muttered. "This is out of control." Back at Walter Reed, they rushed Harper inside through a service entrance, avoiding the cameras. But the damage was done. The hearing footage was already spreading online. Reed's questions about her PTSD trending, people debating whether she was a hero or a dangerous vigilante. In her room, Harper sat in the wheelchair and stared at nothing. Torres paced. Nash stood by the window, arms crossed. Cross was on her phone barking orders at someone. "This is exactly what Brennan wanted," Nash said finally. "To make you look unstable, to turn public opinion." "It's working," Harper said flatly. "Not with everyone." Torres pulled up his phone, showed her a trending hashtag. Hashtag #IStandWithVeil. Thousands of posts from veterans, nurses, first responders. People sharing their own stories of Harper helping them, treating them, saving them. But there were just as many posts calling her a fraud, a plant, a crisis actor. The door opened. Agent Chen entered, her expression grave. "We have a problem. Richard Brennan just held an impromptu press conference on the courthouse steps. He's claiming you're part of a conspiracy to destroy his reputation, that you orchestrated the diner attack to create a hero narrative, that your PTSD makes you a danger to yourself and others." Harper's blood went cold. "He's saying I staged it?" "He's implying it, very carefully, very legally. His attorneys are already filing motions to have your testimony excluded as unreliable." Chen sat down. "And that's not the worst part." "What's the worst part?" Chen pulled up a video on her tablet. This. The footage showed a press conference. A woman in her 50s stood at a podium, tears streaming down her face. "That's Marcus Delacroix's mother," Chen said quietly. On the video, the woman was speaking. "My son was murdered in cold blood by a woman claiming to be a hero. She didn't give him a chance to surrender, just shot him like he was an animal. And now the government is protecting her while my family mourns." Harper felt sick. She doesn't know. She knows what Brennan's attorneys told her, that her son was killed by a PTSD-addled veteran who overreacted. Chen's voice was tight. "They're building a wrongful death case, civil suit, millions in damages, and they're using her grief to destroy your credibility." The room spun. Harper gripped the wheelchair arms, forcing herself to stay present. "We have the video evidence," Torres said. "The security footage shows Delacroix executing Tyler Brennan, shows him attacking Harper. Video can be disputed. Experts can be hired to say it's inconclusive." Chen stood. "This is a coordinated attack on multiple fronts. Legal, public opinion, emotional manipulation. Brennan's using every weapon he has." Harper looked up. "Then we hit back harder." Everyone turned to stare at her. "How?" Nash asked. Harper's mind was racing, connecting threads, seeing the pattern. "Brennan's weakness is his nephew. Tyler tried to surrender. Marcus executed him to keep him quiet. That means Tyler was going to talk, to expose the operation, to implicate his uncle. We can't prove that without Tyler's testimony," Chen said. "No, but we can prove the money trail." Harper turned to Agent Chen. "You said Brennan's been embezzling for years. Fake vendors, kickbacks. Those records exist. Financial documents don't lie." Chen's expression shifted. "We're already building that case, but it's slow, it's technical, it doesn't capture public attention." Harper's voice gained strength. "You need to leak it. Give the media something concrete. Show them the bank records, the fake contracts, the money flowing from the hospital to Tyler's accounts. Make it impossible for Brennan to claim ignorance." "That's risky," Torres warned. "Could compromise the investigation." "Brennan's already compromising it by turning this into a media war." Harper met his eyes. "You want to win in court? Fine. Build your case, but you need to win in the court of public opinion first, or the jury will convict me before I ever take the stand." Chen and Torres exchanged a look. "She's right," Chen said finally. "We've been playing defense. We need to go on offense." "I'll make some calls," Torres said. "See what we can leak without jeopardizing the case." After they left, only Nash and Major Cross remained. Nash sat down beside Harper. "That was impressive. That was survival." Harper's hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. "Brennan wants to destroy me? Fine, but I'm taking him down with me." Cross was studying her with something like approval. "That's the warrior I was hoping to see." "I'm not a warrior anymore. I'm just someone who's tired of being pushed around." "Same thing," Cross said. The evening news cycle was brutal. Every network ran variations of the same story. Decorated veteran versus grieving mother. Harper's PTSD versus Marcus's human rights. The diner attack versus Brennan's reputation. But then, around 9 p.m., something shifted. A financial analyst on a cable news show dropped a bombshell. Leaked documents showing Richard Brennan's embezzlement scheme. Millions traced from Mercy Ridge Medical Center through shell companies into personal accounts. The analyst held up a spreadsheet. This is fraud on a massive scale, and the timeline suggests Brennan was funneling money to his nephew Tyler for at least 6 months before the diner attack. Within an hour, the narrative was changing. Twitter exploded with forensic accountants breaking down the documents. Reddit threads compiled evidence. Journalists who'd been defending Brennan started asking harder questions. By midnight, 3 of Brennan's attorneys had withdrawn from his defense. Harper watched it unfold from her hospital bed, unable to look away. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Vale. Ms. Vale, this is Harrison Reed. The attorney's voice was carefully neutral. I'd like to discuss a possible resolution to this matter. Harper's pulse quickened. I'm listening. My client is willing to consider a plea agreement in exchange for your cooperation in limiting the media exposure. A joint statement acknowledging mistakes on both sides. An agreement to drop civil suits. No. Reed paused. I don't think you understand the situation. I understand perfectly. Your client is drowning and you're trying to use me as a life raft. Harper's voice was ice. Tell Richard Brennan that I will testify. I will tell the truth, and I will watch him go to prison for what he did. She hung up. Nash was grinning. That was beautiful. That was necessary. Harper set her phone down. He's scared. That means we're winning. The next morning, the FBI arrested Richard Brennan at his home. The footage was everywhere. Federal agents leading him out in handcuffs while cameras recorded every second. His attorneys shouted about false prosecution. Brennan himself said nothing, his face a mask of rage and terror. The charges were extensive: conspiracy, embezzlement, money laundering, obstruction of justice, accessory to armed robbery. Agent Chen appeared on national television. This investigation has revealed a pattern of criminal behavior spanning multiple years in multiple states. Richard Brennan used his position of authority to enrich himself and fund criminal operations. He then attempted to silence witnesses and obstruct justice when those operations came to light. The reporter asked the obvious question. What about Harper Vale? Is she a victim or a vigilante? Chen's expression was steel. Ms. Vale is a decorated combat veteran who acted on instinct to protect lives. She's cooperating fully with our investigation and will testify before a grand jury. Anyone suggesting she's anything other than a hero hasn't been paying attention. Back at Walter Reed, Harper watched the press conference with Torres, Nash, and Cross. It's over, Torres said quietly. Brennan's done. It's not over until he's convicted, Harper replied. But for the first time in days, she felt something like hope. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Reyes. The board voted unanimously. Brennan's fired. You're welcome back anytime. Then another text, this one from Jessica Howell. My editor wants to run your full story. Exclusive interview. Your terms. Interested? Harper stared at the messages. A week ago, she'd been invisible. Now the world wanted to know everything about her. Cross was watching her. What are you going to do? Harper thought about it. About Firebase Viper. About 3 years of running. About the person she'd tried to bury and the person she actually was. I'm going to testify, she said finally. Put Brennan away, then... She paused. Then I'm going to figure out who Harper Vale actually is when she's not hiding. Nash smiled. That's my girl. The door opened. A nurse entered, professional and brisk. Ms. Vale, you have another visitor. Says it's urgent. Who? The nurse stepped aside. A woman walked in, late 40s, wearing a military uniform with stars on her shoulders. A general. Everyone in the room snapped to attention. The general's gaze swept across them before landing on Harper. Staff Sergeant Vale, she said, her voice carrying command authority that made the air feel heavier. I'm General Sarah Kimball, USMC. I've been reviewing your service record, and I have a proposition for you. Harper's heart was pounding. Ma'am? General Kimball stepped closer, her expression unreadable. How would you feel about coming back? Not as a medic, as an instructor. We need someone who understands combat trauma to train the next generation of corpsmen. Someone who's lived it, someone who can teach them to survive. The room was silent. Harper stared at her. I was discharged. Medical, I'm aware. I'm also aware that you just took down multiple armed hostiles while recovering from surgery. That doesn't sound like someone who's medically unfit for service. Kimball's eyes were hard. The discharge was administrative. I can reverse it with a single signature. The question is, do you want me to? Harper's mind was reeling. Return to the Marines? After everything she'd done to escape? But as she looked around the room, at Torres in his dress blues, at Cross standing at attention, at Nash who'd found her own path back to purpose, she realized something. She'd never actually left. Achim, Harper started. The fire alarm began shrieking. Not again, Harper thought. Then the lights went out and the emergency generators failed to kick in. Complete darkness. Someone screamed in the hallway. Then gunfire. Close, immediate, and inside the hospital. General Kimball had her sidearm out before the second shot echoed through the corridor. Cross moved instantly, positioning herself between Harper and the door. Torres grabbed Harper's wheelchair, pulling her behind the bed as cover. Nash was already at the window, scanning the grounds below. 3 vehicles just pulled up to the emergency entrance, not law enforcement. The gunfire intensified, automatic weapons, close quarters, the distinctive crack of military-grade hardware that didn't belong in a medical facility. This is a coordinated assault, Kimball said, her voice clipped and controlled. They're not here by accident. Harper's mind was racing through possibilities. Brennan was in federal custody. His attorneys had withdrawn. The money trail was public. Who had the resources and motivation to? The realization hit like a fist to the gut. The robbery ring, she said. It wasn't just 3 people. Delacroix was the operational leader. There's someone above him, someone who funded the whole operation. Kimball's expression darkened. And they just lost their fall guy when Brennan got arrested. More gunfire. Closer now. People were screaming in the hallways, patients, nurses, staff trapped in a war zone they hadn't trained for. Cross was on her radio. This is Major Andrea Cross requesting immediate backup at Walter Reed, East Wing, 3rd floor. We have active shooters, unknown number of hostiles, VIP in danger. The door exploded inward. 3 men in tactical gear poured through, weapons raised. Not the panicked amateurs from the diner, these were professionals. Body armor, coordinated movement, suppressed weapons. General Kimball fired twice. The lead hostile went down, body armor absorbing the impact but knocking him back through the doorway. Cross grabbed a metal tray and hurled it at the second man's face, buying herself a second to draw her own weapon. Torres shoved Harper's wheelchair toward the bathroom. Get in there! Lock it! Like hell. That's an order, Staff Sergeant. Nash was already firing. She'd somehow produced a compact pistol from an ankle holster. The 3rd hostile took cover in the hallway, returning fire in controlled bursts. Harper rolled into the bathroom, her useless legs screaming protest. She slammed the door, locked it, and immediately looked for weapons. Medical supplies. A mirror she could break. Anything. Outside, the firefight was brutal and brief. She heard Kimball shouting commands, Torres returning fire, the thud of bodies hitting the floor. Then silence. Harper held her breath, straining to hear. Footsteps approached the bathroom door. She grabbed a metal towel bar, ripping it from the wall mount. Harper, it's me, Nash's voice. We're clear. Harper unlocked the door. The hospital room looked like a war zone. Bullet holes in the walls, overturned furniture, medical equipment sparking. 2 hostiles lay dead. The 3rd was unconscious, zip-tied by Torres. Kimball was on her phone, barking orders to someone. Cross was doing triage on the unconscious hostile, checking for ID, weapons, anything useful. They had our location, Nash said quietly. Knew exactly which room you were in. Inside information, Kimball confirmed, ending her call. Someone fed them your position, which means we have a leak. Harper's stomach twisted. How many people knew I was here? Too many. Cross pulled a wallet from the unconscious man's pocket, flipped it open. Her face went pale. Oh, hell. What? Cross held up an ID badge. Federal credentials, Department of Justice. The implications crashed down like an avalanche. Someone inside the federal system was compromised. Someone with access to witness protection details, investigation files, Harper's exact location. "We need to move," Kimball said. "Now, before they send reinforcements." Torres was already gathering supplies. Harper's medications, her medical files, anything they'd need. Nash grabbed Harper's phone and the few personal items scattered around the room. "Where are we going?" Harper asked. "Somewhere off the grid." Kimball's tone left no room for argument. "Somewhere they can't track you." Cross hauled the unconscious hostile upright, dragging him toward the door. "He's coming with us. I want answers." They moved fast, Kimball leading, Cross dragging the prisoner, Torres pushing Harper's wheelchair, Nash covering the rear. The hallway was chaos. Medical staff huddled in rooms, terrified. Security guards were trying to coordinate a response, but clearly weren't trained for military-grade assault. Kimball led them to a service elevator Harper hadn't known existed. They descended to a sub-basement level that smelled like old concrete and disinfectant. A maintenance corridor stretched into darkness. "There's a tunnel system that connects to the parking structure," Kimball explained, moving at double time. "Built during the Cold War for evacuation scenarios." They emerged in an underground garage. A black armored SUV sat idling, engine running, driver wearing tactical gear. Kimball's advance team. They loaded quickly, Harper into the back seat, the unconscious hostile into the cargo area, everyone else piling in. The vehicle peeled out before the doors were fully closed. Above them, sirens wailed. Police vehicles converged on Walter Reed. News helicopters were already circling. Nash pulled up a live news feed on her phone. The footage showed the hospital's main entrance, broken glass, armed response teams, gurneys being rushed out. "At least 12 casualties," a reporter was saying breathlessly. "Multiple fatalities. Authorities are calling this a targeted attack, though they haven't confirmed who the target was." Kimball took the phone and shut it off. "We're going dark. No devices, no communications that can be traced." "Where exactly are we going?" Harper asked again. "Marine Corps Base Quantico? Secure facility, controlled access, and more importantly, people I trust." Kimball's eyes were steel in the rear-view mirror. "We need to figure out who's compromised before they make another attempt on your life." The drive took 40 minutes through back roads and rural highways. Harper watched Virginia countryside blur past, her mind trying to process everything that had happened in the past 72 hours. From invisible nurse to federal witness to assassination target. Quantico's gates appeared. Razor wire, armed guards, checkpoints that required 3 separate clearances. They drove deep into the base, past training facilities and administrative buildings, to a bunker-like structure that looked like it had survived multiple wars. Inside, the facility was Spartan, concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, the kind of place designed for function over comfort. Kimball led them to a secure conference room where 3 people were already waiting. Harper recognized one immediately, Agent Chen. The other 2 were military intelligence, based on their uniforms and the way they studied everyone who entered like they were reading threat assessments. "Staff Sergeant Vale," Chen's voice was tight. "Glad you're alive." "That makes 2 of us." Harper's leg was throbbing from the rough transport. "What the hell is happening?" "We're trying to figure that out." Chen gestured to the intelligence officers. "This is Colonel Marcus Hayes, DIA, and Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okonkwo, ONI. They've been running a parallel investigation into the robbery ring." Hayes stepped forward, pulling up files on a digital display. "The operation you stumbled into isn't just about small-town robberies. It's a money laundering scheme connected to a larger criminal network operating across the eastern seaboard. We estimate total revenue at over $50 million. Harper stared at the numbers. $50 million? From hitting diners and gas stations? "The robberies were cover," Okonkwo explained. "Small operations that generated clean cash which could be funneled into legitimate businesses. Classic laundering technique. The real money came from elsewhere. Drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, human trafficking." The room temperature seemed to drop. "Marcus Delacroix wasn't the top of the chain," Hayes continued. "He was middle management. The person running this operation is someone with serious resources, political connections, law enforcement contacts." He paused. "Someone who could orchestrate a military-grade assault on a federal medical facility and nearly succeed." "Do we have a name?" Kimball asked. "We have a theory." Chen pulled up a photo. Senator William Grayson, Virginia State Senator for the past 12 years. Multiple business interests, extensive real estate holdings, and this is the important part, he sits on the Oversight Committee for Federal Law Enforcement Funding. Harper studied the photo. Distinguished man in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of face that appeared in campaign ads promising integrity and service. Grayson has access to confidential law enforcement information, Chen said, including witness protection details, investigation files, and federal custody locations. If he's compromised, he could have leaked your position to his people. That's a serious accusation, Cross said. You're talking about a sitting senator running a criminal empire. We're talking about a man who's avoided prosecution for a decade despite multiple investigations into his business practices. Hayes pulled up more files, financial records, surveillance photos, intercepted communications. We've been building a case for 2 years, but he's insulated, uses cutouts and intermediaries. We could never connect him directly to the crimes. Until now, Okonkwo said, looking at Harper. You killed Marcus Delacroix. Delacroix was Grayson's primary operational manager. With him dead, Grayson's losing control of his network. He's desperate, which means he's vulnerable. Harper's tactical mind was already working. He sent people to kill me because I'm the only living witness who can connect his organization to violent crimes. If I testify about Delacroix, if the jury hears that his people tried to assassinate me in a federal facility, it establishes a pattern, makes it harder for him to claim ignorance. Exactly. Chen leaned forward. We need you to testify, not just against Richard Brennan, against the entire network. Grand jury testimony that exposes the connections between Brennan, Tyler, Delacroix, and ultimately Grayson. You want me to take down a senator. We want you to tell the truth. The evidence will take down the senator, Chen's voice was firm. But it only works if you're alive to testify. The weight of it settled over Harper like a lead blanket. She'd gone from trying to stay invisible to being the linchpin in a federal case against organized crime and political corruption. What about the leak? Nash asked. Someone inside DOJ fed Grayson Harper's location. Until we find them, she's not safe. We're conducting an internal investigation, Chen said, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, the door opened. A Marine guard entered carrying a laptop. Colonel Hayes, you need to see this. It just went live. Hayes took the laptop, opened it, and his expression turned to stone. He rotated the screen so everyone could see. It was a press conference. Senator Grayson stood at a podium, cameras everywhere, his expression grave and concerned. Deeply troubling allegations, Grayson was saying. Ms. Harper Vale is clearly suffering from severe psychological trauma. Her actions at Walter Reed today, endangering patients and staff, provoking a violent confrontation, demonstrate that she's a danger to herself and others. I'm calling for an immediate psychiatric evaluation and questioning whether someone in her condition should be considered a credible witness in any legal proceeding. Harper's blood turned to ice. He's getting ahead of it, discrediting me before I can testify. It's more than that, Hayes said grimly. He's setting the narrative, making you the villain, so when his attorneys attack you in court, the public's already primed to believe them. The press conference continued. A reporter asked a question Harper couldn't hear. Grayson's response was smooth, practiced. I have the utmost respect for our veterans, but we must acknowledge that PTSD is a serious condition that requires treatment, not celebration. Lionizing someone who's clearly in crisis does a disservice to all veterans who are struggling. His voice dripped false compassion. My office is prepared to help Ms. Vale get the care she needs, but first, we must ensure she's not a threat to public safety. Son of a bitch, Torres muttered. The screen split. Grayson's press conference on one side, footage from Walter Reed on the other. The chyron read, decorated veteran or dangerous vigilante. Social media was already exploding, half defending Harper, half calling her unstable. The narrative was fracturing in real time. Chen shut the laptop. We need to counter this. Fast. How? Harper's voice was hollow. He's a senator with unlimited resources and media access. I'm a nurse in a wheelchair with a PTSD diagnosis. Who's going to believe me over him? The evidence will speak for itself, Hayes said. Evidence doesn't matter if nobody's willing to listen. Harper met his eyes. Grayson's playing a longer game. He's not trying to win in court. He's trying to win in the court of public opinion. If he succeeds, it doesn't matter what I testify to. The jury will see me as unreliable before I ever take the stand. Silence fell over the room. Kimball spoke first. Then we changed the game. Stop playing defense and go on offense. What do you suggest? Chen asked. Give them a story they can't ignore. A narrative stronger than Grayson's spin. Kimball turned to Harper. You said earlier that you wanted to figure out who you are when you're not hiding. Here's your chance. Stop letting other people define you. Define yourself. Harper understood immediately. You want me to go public? Full interview, complete transparency. I want you to own your story before someone else writes it for you. Kimball's expression was fierce. You're a decorated combat veteran who saved lives and exposed corruption. You're not unstable. You're someone who refused to look away when evil was happening. That's not a flaw. That's courage. Grayson will tear it apart. Let him try. Nash leaned forward. Harper, you've been running from your past for 3 years. Firebase Viper, your discharge, your service. You've treated it all like something to be ashamed of. But the people trying to destroy you? They're counting on your shame, on your silence. What if you took that weapon away from them? Harper looked around the room. These people, Marines, federal agents, intelligence officers, they weren't asking her to be someone she wasn't. They were asking her to stop pretending to be less than she was. If I do this, she said slowly, I do it my way. No handlers, no scripted responses. Just the truth. The truth is all we need, Chen said. The decision was made. Within 2 hours, Jessica Howell arrived at Quantico with a camera crew. Not a major network, she'd promised Harper control over the final edit, something the big outlets wouldn't guarantee. They set up in a small office. Plain background, simple lighting. Harper sat in her wheelchair, still in hospital clothes, bandages visible. She refused makeup, refused to dress it up. Jessica sat across from her, notepad in hand but camera rolling. Tell me about Firebase Viper, Jessica said quietly. Harper took a breath. She'd never talked about it publicly, had barely talked about it with her therapist. February 2019, Helmand Province, Afghanistan. We were a small forward operating base, 60 Marines, isolated position, minimal support. Intelligence had been reporting Taliban movement in the area, but we didn't know they were planning a coordinated assault. Her voice was steady, clinical. They hit us at dawn. Mortars, small arms fire, RPGs. We were outnumbered 5-1. You were the senior medic. I was. When the casualties started coming in, 8 wounded in the first 30 minutes, I had to make a choice. Stay and reinforce the perimeter, or evacuate the wounded before they died from their injuries. What did you choose? I chose to save the 14 Marines who were still alive. I organized an emergency evacuation under fire, got them to the LZ, got them out. Harper's hands fisted. 8 Marines stayed behind to cover our withdrawal. All 8 died when the firebase was overrun. Jessica's expression was compassionate but unflinching. Do you regret that choice? The question hung in the air. Harper had been asked it before, by review boards, by therapists, by herself in the dark hours of the night. Every single day, she said quietly. I see their faces. I know their names. I carry them with me. She paused. But I'd make the same choice again. Because the alternative was losing 22 Marines instead of 8. It was the right tactical decision, even though it destroyed me to make it. Is that why you left the military? I left because I couldn't reconcile who I was with what I'd done. The Marine Corps wanted to promote me, wanted to give me a medal, but I felt like a fraud, like I'd failed those 8 Marines and didn't deserve recognition. Harper's voice cracked. So I disappeared, became someone else, tried to forget. But you couldn't forget. No, because the person I was trying to become, this quiet nurse who just wanted peace, that wasn't real. The real me is someone who runs toward danger, who makes impossible choices, who protects people even when it costs everything. Harper looked directly into the camera. At the diner, I didn't think. I just moved, because that's who I am. And Senator Grayson can call me unstable, can question my credibility, can try to make me the villain. But the truth is simple. I saved Sergeant Torres's life. I exposed Richard Brennan's corruption. I stopped violent criminals. And I'd do it all again. Jessica leaned forward. There are people saying you're dangerous, that your PTSD makes you a threat. PTSD doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you hypervigilant, protective, sometimes too protective. Harper's voice strengthened. I manage my condition. I function. I save lives. And the idea that we should discount the testimony of veterans because we've seen combat, that's not just wrong, it's insulting. We're the ones who understand violence, who recognize threats, who know how to respond when civilians are in danger. What would you say to Senator Grayson? Harper smiled, not kindly. I'd say his people tried to kill me in a federal hospital, tried to silence me before I could testify about the criminal network I exposed, and if that's not evidence of guilt, I don't know what is. The interview lasted 90 minutes. When it ended, Harper felt hollowed out but strangely lighter, like she'd been carrying a weight she hadn't realized was there. Jessica reviewed the footage, her expression thoughtful. This is powerful, raw, exactly what people need to see. When will it air? I'm filing it tonight. It'll be online within hours, broadcast tomorrow morning. Jessica met Harper's eyes. Thank you for trusting me with this. After Jessica left, Chen pulled Harper aside. The prisoner from Walter Reed is talking. We've been interrogating him for the past 3 hours. Chen's expression was grim. He confirmed that Senator Grayson ordered the hit, said Grayson panicked when Brennan was arrested, afraid you'd connect the dots between Brennan's embezzlement and the larger laundering network. Will he testify? He's already negotiating a plea deal, full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Chen paused. But there's more. He identified the DOJ leak. A deputy assistant director named Marcus Chen, no relation to me. He's been on Grayson's payroll for 6 years, feeding him information about investigations. Harper absorbed that. So we have testimony from a cooperating witness and a compromised federal official. That's enough for an indictment? More than enough. The U.S. attorney is convening an emergency grand jury session tomorrow. They'll hear testimony from the prisoner, review the financial evidence, and vote on charges. Chen's voice was steady. We're going to arrest Senator Grayson tomorrow night. The news hit like thunder. You're arresting a sitting U.S. senator. We're arresting a criminal who happens to be a senator. There's a difference. Chen's eyes were hard. This goes all the way up, Harper. Grayson has connections in multiple federal agencies, state governments, even international contacts. Taking him down is going to create shockwaves. Good, Harper said. Let it shake. The interview went live at 8 p.m. Within 30 minutes, it had 5 million views. By midnight, it was trending globally. The response was overwhelming. Veterans organizations released statements supporting Harper. Nurses' unions condemned the attacks on her character. Political commentators debated whether Grayson had gone too far. But the most powerful response came from an unexpected source. General Kimball walked into Harper's temporary quarters at Quantico holding a tablet. You need to see this. It was a video, shot from a phone camera, clearly amateur, but the subject was unmistakable. 20 Marines in dress uniforms standing at attention in front of the Capitol building. One Marine stepped forward. Harper recognized him. Torres. My name is Sergeant Miguel Torres, United States Marine Corps. 7 days ago, Staff Sergeant Harper Vale saved my life. She threw herself between me and a bullet without hesitation, without calculation, without fear. His voice was steady, powerful. Since then, I've watched people try to destroy her, call her unstable, question her service, paint her as a villain, and I'm here to say, enough. Behind him, more Marines stepped forward, then sailors, then soldiers, then veterans in civilian clothes. A crowd was forming, growing by the minute. Harper Vale is a hero, Torres continued, not because she wants to be, not because she's seeking glory, but because when she saw someone in danger, she acted. That's what we do. That's who we are. And anyone who tries to tear her down is going to have to go through every single one of us first. The camera panned across the growing crowd. Hundreds of people now. Signs reading Semper Fi. I stand with Harper. Veterans Against Corruption. Kimball paused the video. That was filmed 2 hours ago. Current estimate is over 3,000 people gathered at the Capitol, and it's growing. Harper couldn't speak, couldn't process the magnitude of what she was seeing. "You're not alone anymore," Kimball said quietly. "You never were. You just needed to stop hiding long enough to let people stand with you." The next morning, Harper was transported under heavy security to the federal courthouse. Not as a defendant, as a witness. The grand jury proceedings were closed to the public, but the media presence outside was massive. Cameras everywhere, protesters, both for and against her, armed security creating cordons. Inside, the grand jury room was smaller than Harper expected. 23 ordinary citizens sitting in judgment. The prosecutor, Michael Torres, still no relation, presented the case methodically. Financial records showing money flowing from Grayson's shell companies to Brennan to Tyler. Testimony from the captured prisoner linking Grayson directly to the Walter Reed attack. Communications intercepts between Grayson and the compromised DOJ official. Then it was Harper's turn. She wheeled herself to the witness stand, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor walked her through everything: the diner, the hospital, Brennan's pressure campaign, the mechanical room fight, the assassination attempt. The grand jurors listened intently, taking notes, their expressions shifting from skeptical to shocked to angry. When Harper described Marcus Delacroix executing Tyler Brennan to keep him quiet, one juror actually gasped. The prosecutor ended with a simple question. "Ms. Vale, in your professional opinion as someone trained in combat threat assessment, was the attack at Walter Reed a coordinated attempt on your life?" "Yes." "And do you believe Senator William Grayson ordered that attack?" "I believe the evidence speaks for itself. I know Marcus Delacroix worked for Grayson. I know Grayson had access to my location through compromised federal sources. I know he had motive to silence me before I could testify about his criminal network." Harper met the prosecutor's eyes. "Do I believe he ordered it?" "Yes, absolutely." The grand jury deliberated for 47 minutes. They returned a true bill on all charges. Senator William Grayson was indicted on conspiracy, racketeering, money laundering, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. That evening, federal agents arrested him at his home in Arlington. The footage was spectacular. The senator in handcuffs, his attorneys swarming, cameras recording every humiliating second. Harper watched from Quantico, surrounded by the people who'd become her unlikely family: Torres, Nash, Cross, Kimball, Chen. "It's not over," Chen cautioned. "He'll fight this. Hire the best attorneys money can buy. Drag it out for years." "Let him fight," Harper said. "I'm not going anywhere." Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Reyes. "The board wants you back. ER supervisor position is waiting. No pressure, but we need you." Another text from Jessica Howell. "Interview has 40 million views. Publishers want to talk book deals. You interested?" Harper stared at the messages, overwhelmed by possibilities. Kimball spoke quietly. "My offer still stands. Come back to the core. Train the next generation. Put that experience to use." "I'll think about it," Harper said. But she was already thinking about something else. About the people she'd saved. About the Marines who'd stood with her. About the veterans who'd gathered at the Capitol because she'd given them permission to be proud of their scars. She'd spent 3 years running from who she was. Maybe it was time to run toward something instead. The next few days were a blur. Richard Brennan's trial was fast-tracked. The evidence was overwhelming. His attorneys were abandoning ship, and the prosecution had him dead to rights. He pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for 30 years instead of life. The sentencing hearing was public. Harper attended in her wheelchair, sitting in the front row, while Brennan read a prepared statement about accepting responsibility and seeking redemption. She didn't believe a word of it. The judge sentenced him to 30 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole. Ordered full restitution to Mercy Ridge Medical Center and the families of everyone affected by his crimes. As the marshals led Brennan away, he looked directly at Harper. No smile this time, just the hollow eyes of a man who'd lost everything. Harper felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just the quiet certainty that justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Harper let Nash and Torres handle crowd control while she rolled down the steps to where a car was waiting. But something made her pause. A woman stood at the edge of the crowd. Late 40s, tear-stained face, holding a photo of a young man. Harper recognized him from the FBI files. one of Marcus Delacroix's crew members who'd been arrested in the initial sweep. The woman caught Harper's eye. For a moment, neither moved. Then the woman walked forward. Security tensed, but Harper raised a hand, stopping them. "My son was part of this," the woman said quietly. "He's in prison now, 20 years, and I needed to see you, to understand why." Harper looked at her, saw the same grief she'd seen in the faces of families at Firebase Viper, the same desperate need for answers that would never come. "I'm sorry," Harper said. "It was inadequate. It was all she had." The woman nodded, tears streaming. "He made his choices, I know that. But he was my son. And now he's gone." She looked at the photo in her hands. "I don't blame you. I just needed you to know that the people you fought, they were someone's children too." She walked away before Harper could respond. Nash appeared at her elbow. "You okay?" Harper watched the woman disappear into the crowd. "I will be." That night, Harper sat alone in her temporary quarters at Quantico, staring at her phone. 3 missed calls from General Kimball, 5 texts from Dr. Reyes, a voicemail from a literary agent. She'd been offered choices, real choices, the kind she hadn't had in 3 years. Return to the Marines as an instructor, take the ER supervisor position, write a book, do interviews, become a public figure, or disappear again. Find another small town, another quiet job, another chance to be invisible. Harper closed her eyes and thought about Firebase Viper, about the 8 Marines she couldn't save, about the 14 she did, about Sergeant Torres alive because she moved, about Brennan in prison, about Grayson awaiting trial. She thought about who she'd been trying to become and who she actually was. When she opened her eyes, she knew. The next morning, Harper made her decision. She was sitting in General Kimball's office when the general arrived with coffee and a knowing expression. "You've chosen," Kimball said. It wasn't a question. "I have." Harper met her eyes. "I'm not coming back to the Corps. Not as an instructor." Kimball nodded slowly. "May I ask why?" "Because I've spent my whole life serving institutions. The military, the hospital. Always putting on a uniform and following someone else's rules." Harper paused. "I need to figure out what serving looks like when I'm the one making the rules." "What does that mean?" Harper pulled out her phone, showed Kimball a document she'd been working on since midnight. "I'm starting a nonprofit, crisis response training for civilians, teaching people how to recognize threats, respond to violence, save lives. Free programs for veterans, first responders, nurses, anyone who might face danger." Kimball read through the proposal, her expression shifting from surprise to approval. "This is ambitious. It's necessary. I can't save everyone, but I can teach others how to save themselves." Harper's voice strengthened. "I'm calling it the Firebase Initiative, named after the Marines who died so others could live." "That's good," Kimball said quietly. "That's really good. I'll need funding, instructors, facilities." Harper met her eyes. "I'm hoping the Marine Corps might be willing to partner, provide resources in exchange for training programs." Kimball smiled, genuine, proud. "I'll make some calls." Harper stood to leave, then paused. "Thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was trying to be invisible." "You were never invisible, Staff Sergeant. You were just waiting for the right moment to stand up." Kimball extended her hand. "Semper Fi." Harper shook it. "Semper Fi." She left Kimball's office and found Torres waiting outside. "Ma'am, I heard about the nonprofit. I'd like to volunteer, help with instruction, outreach, whatever you need." Harper studied him. "You're still active duty." "For now, but my enlistment's up in 6 months, and I've been thinking about what comes next." Torres's expression was earnest. "You saved my life. I'd like to help you save others." More people appeared over the next hour, Nash offering her expertise in private security training, 3 nurses from Mercy Ridge wanting to develop emergency response protocols, 2 Marines from Major Cross's detail asking about instructor positions. By noon, Harper had the skeleton of a team. By evening, Dr. Reyes called with news. Mercy Ridge Medical Center wanted to partner with the Firebase Initiative, offering training space and medical supplies. We've been hemorrhaging staff since the Brennan scandal, Reyes explained. Nurses don't trust the administration. Patients are going elsewhere. We need to rebuild credibility. Partnering with your organization, training our people in crisis response, showing we value safety and preparedness, that's how we do it. Harper negotiated terms. Full autonomy for her programs. No administrative interference. Complete transparency. Reyes agreed to everything. 2 weeks later, Harper stood in an empty warehouse that would become the Firebase Initiative's first training facility. Her leg was healing. She could walk short distances with a cane now, though the limp would be permanent. She didn't mind. Scars told stories. Hers told the truth. Torres was setting up equipment. Nash was designing curriculum. Cross had sent over 3 retired Marine instructors who wanted to help. The grand opening was scheduled for next month. Free crisis response training for anyone who wanted it. Special programs for veterans, first responders, medical staff. Harper's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Vale? Ms. Vale, this is Assistant Director Marcus Vance, FBI. I'm calling about Senator Grayson's trial. Harper's pulse quickened. Has something happened? His attorneys just filed a motion to dismiss all charges. They're claiming prosecutorial misconduct, tainted evidence, and this is the concerning part, they've submitted an affidavit from a forensic psychologist stating you suffer from severe PTSD and your testimony is unreliable. But the familiar rage burned through Harper's chest. We've been through this. I know, and the judge denied the motion. But Grayson's team isn't done. They're planning to attack you on the stand. Make the trial about your mental health instead of his crimes. Vance paused. The prosecutor wants to know if you're prepared for that. Harper looked around the warehouse, at the people working to build something good from all the violence and trauma, at the second chance she'd fought for and earned. Tell the prosecutor I'm ready, she said. Let them come. I'm not hiding anymore. She ended the call and got back to work. The Firebase Initiative opened its doors on a crisp October morning. Over 200 people showed up for the first day of training, veterans, nurses, teachers, parents who wanted to know how to protect their children. Harper taught the first session herself. Basic threat assessment, how to recognize danger before it escalated, when to run, when to fight, when to freeze. She talked about Firebase Viper, about the diner, about the choices she'd made and the weight she carried. Fear is normal, she told the class. Trauma is real, but neither one means you're broken. They mean you survived something hard, and now you get to decide what you do with that survival. After the session, a young nurse approached her. I work at Mercy Ridge. I was there the day you came back to confront Brennan. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I'd ever seen. Harper shook her head. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. The nurse smiled. You taught me that. That evening, Harper sat in her office reviewing applications for the next training cycle. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Senator Grayson's trial had been scheduled. 6 months from now. Federal courthouse, full media coverage, expected to last weeks. Harper stared at the notification, then deleted it. She'd testify when the time came. She'd tell the truth. She'd face whatever his attorneys threw at her. But until then, she had work to do. The door opened. Jessica Howell walked in, camera equipment over her shoulder. Hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to get some footage of the facility for a follow-up piece. Jessica looked around, impressed. This is incredible, Harper. You built all this in 2 weeks? I had help. Harper gestured to the activity outside. People training, learning, growing stronger. Jessica set up her camera. One question before I start filming. You've been through hell. Lost your anonymity, nearly died multiple times, became the center of a national scandal. Was it worth it? Harper thought about Sergeant Torres, alive and volunteering, about Richard Brennan in prison, about the veterans at the Capitol standing together, about the woman she'd become when she stopped running. Yeah, she said quietly. It was worth it. Jessica smiled and hit record, and 3 days later Harper received a letter. Federal Prison letterhead. She opened it cautiously. Dear Staff Sergeant Vale, you don't know me, but my son was one of the 8 Marines who died at Firebase Viper. I've followed your story in the news. I've read the articles, watched the interviews, seen what you've built. I need you to know something. You made the right call that day. My son knew the risks. He chose to stay and fight so others could live. That was his decision, and I'm proud of him for it. I don't blame you. I never blamed you. And I hope someday you can stop blaming yourself. Thank you for honoring their sacrifice by continuing to save lives. Semper Fidelis, Margaret Winters. Harper read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a frame on her office wall, right next to the photo of Firebase Viper. The past didn't have to be a prison. It could be a foundation. She was learning the difference. That night, Harper was locking up the facility when a car pulled into the parking lot. Expensive sedan, tinted windows. Her instincts kicked in, hand reaching for the phone in her pocket, eyes scanning for exits. The door opened. Senator William Grayson stepped out. He wasn't in handcuffs, wasn't under guard, just walked toward her like they were old friends meeting for coffee. Harper's blood went cold. You're supposed to be under house arrest. I posted bail, $20 million. Grayson smiled, the same polished expression from his press conferences. Worth every penny for this conversation. We have nothing to talk about. On the contrary, we have everything to talk about. Grayson stopped 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, casual as death. You've made quite a mess, Ms. Vale. Cost me a considerable amount of money. Destroyed years of carefully built infrastructure. I'm impressed. Harper's hand closed around her phone. Leave now, or I call the police, or I call the... Go ahead. I'm not violating any terms of my release. I'm simply having a conversation with a concerned citizen. His smile widened. Here's what's going to happen. My trial will be a spectacle. My attorneys will tear you apart. Your PTSD, your questionable decisions, your violent history, all of it will be public record. By the time we're done, you'll be unemployable. Your little nonprofit will collapse, and the Firebase initiative will be remembered as the vanity project of a disturbed veteran who couldn't let go of the war. You're threatening me? I'm promising you. Grayson's voice dropped, all pretense gone. You should have stayed invisible, Harper. Should have drunk your coffee and minded your business. Now you've made yourself a target, and targets get eliminated. He turned and walked back to his car. Harper stood frozen, every muscle screaming danger, her mind calculating responses and finding none that didn't end in violence. The car door opened. Grayson paused. See you in court, Staff Sergeant. He drove away. Harper stood in the empty parking lot, hands shaking, rage and fear warring in her chest. Then she pulled out her phone and called Agent Chen. He just threatened me, Grayson. He showed up at my facility and made it clear he's coming after me. Chen's voice was sharp. Did you record it? No, I didn't think, but then it's your word against his. His attorneys will claim you're paranoid, seeing threats that don't exist. Chen exhaled. But this confirms what we suspected. He's not going to plea out. He's going to fight. And he's going to make you the enemy. Harper looked at the Firebase Initiative building, at everything she'd built, at the future she'd started to believe in. Let him try, she said. I'm done being afraid. She ended the call and walked to her car. Behind her, in the shadows of the parking lot, a figure stepped out from behind a delivery truck. Watching, waiting, recording everything. The figure in the shadows lowered their phone, the recording saved and time-stamped. They waited until Harper's taillights disappeared down the access road before stepping into the light. Jessica Howell. She'd been following a tip about Grayson violating his bail conditions, and she'd just captured every word of his threat. Her hands were steady as she uploaded the video to her encrypted cloud storage, then called her editor. I've got it. Full audio and video of Senator Grayson threatening Harper Vale. Clear violation of witness intimidation laws. Her editor's response was immediate. Send it. We're running it in 30 minutes. Jessica hesitated only a second. This would destroy what little remained of Grayson's defense, would eliminate any chance of a fair trial argument, would make her a target. She hit send anyway. 28 minutes later, the Washington Post homepage refreshed with breaking news. Senator Grayson caught on video threatening witness. The recording played automatically. Crystal clear audio of Grayson's voice promising to destroy Harper, to eliminate her as a threat. Within 10 minutes, every major network had picked it up. Within 20, federal prosecutors were filing emergency motions. Within 30, U.S. Marshals were en route to arrest Grayson for witness intimidation and bail violation. Harper was halfway home when Agent Chen called. "Turn on the news. Any channel." Harper pulled over, grabbed her phone, and loaded a news stream. Her own face stared back, a photo from the diner incident next to Grayson's official Senate portrait. The headline made her breath catch. "Someone recorded it," she said, stunned. "Jessica Howell. She was staking out your facility on a hunch." Chen's voice was electric with satisfaction. "Grayson just committed a federal felony on camera. His attorneys are in free fall. The judge revoked his bail 10 minutes ago. He's being taken into custody as we speak." Harper watched the split-screen footage. On one side, Grayson's threatening words. On the other, live video of marshals surrounding his Arlington mansion. "This changes everything," Chen continued. "His defense was built on attacking your credibility. Now he's on record threatening you, admitting he wants to destroy you. The jury will see him as exactly what he is, a criminal trying to silence witnesses." Harper closed her eyes, letting the reality sink in. "When's the trial?" "Judge just moved it up. 3 weeks. Prosecution wants to strike while the momentum's hot." Chen paused. "Can you be ready?" Harper thought about the letter from Margaret Winters, about the Firebase initiative, about Torres and Nash, and all the people counting on her to see this through. "I'm ready." The next 3 weeks were a controlled hurricane. Harper balanced running the Firebase initiative with preparing for testimony. Michael Torres, the prosecutor, drilled her relentlessly on every detail, every question Grayson's attorneys might ask, every trap they'd try to spring. "They'll bring up Firebase Viper," he warned. "They'll try to paint you as someone who makes poor decisions under pressure." "Let them." Harper's voice was steel. "I'll tell the truth. I made a tactical choice that saved 14 lives. If they want to characterize that as poor judgment, they can explain it to those 14 Marines who went home alive." Nash sat in on the prep sessions, her security background helping identify weaknesses in Harper's testimony. "They'll question why you didn't call the police at the diner, why you acted alone." "I had 3 seconds before that Marine died. I made the call." Harper met her eyes. "I'd make it again." Torres nodded approvingly. "Good. Own every decision. Show the jury you're someone who acts with purpose, not impulse." The Firebase initiative grew despite the chaos. More volunteers appeared daily. Veterans wanting to teach combat medical skills, nurses designing triage protocols, teachers learning active shooter response. Harper taught evening classes herself, refusing to let the impending trial consume her. These people, her students, needed her present, not distracted by what came next. One evening after class, a young woman approached her, early 20s, nervous energy radiating off her in waves. "Ms. Vale, I'm Emma Brennan, Richard Brennan's daughter." Harper went very still. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be." Emma's voice was bitter. "My father was a criminal. He embezzled millions while my mother worked 2 jobs to keep our family afloat because he claimed the hospital didn't pay enough. He funded my cousin's drug addiction instead of getting him real help. And when it all fell apart, he tried to destroy an innocent woman to save himself." She looked at Harper directly. "I'm here because I want to testify against my father. Tell the jury who he really was." The prosecution added Emma Brennan to their witness list that night. The trial began on a Monday morning in late November. The federal courthouse was a fortress, armed guards, metal detectors, protesters held back by barriers. Half the country seemed to have an opinion on United States versus William Grayson. Harper arrived in a tailored suit Nash had helped her choose, her cane a necessary accessory now. Torres and Cross flanked her, a protective detail that had become familiar. Inside, the courtroom was packed, every seat filled, reporters sketching furiously since cameras weren't allowed. Grayson sat at the defense table looking diminished somehow, his expensive suit unable to mask the reality of a man facing life in prison. His legal team had been reduced to 2 attorneys after the witness intimidation video destroyed their strategy. The jury selection had taken 3 days. 12 citizens who swore they could be impartial despite the media circus. Harper studied their faces, wondering what they saw when they looked at her. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating. Michael Torres laid out the evidence methodically, The money trail from Grayson's companies through shell corporations to the robbery network. The communications between Grayson and Marcus Delacroix. The Walter Reed attack and the compromised DOJ official. The witness intimidation caught on video. This case is about a man who believed he was above the law, Torres told the jury. A man who used his position, his wealth, and his connections to build a criminal empire. And when that empire started to crumble, he tried to eliminate the witnesses who could expose him. The evidence will show you that Senator William Grayson is not a public servant. He's a predator in a suit. The defense's opening was careful, measured. Lead attorney Catherine Ross acknowledged Grayson's mistakes in judgment, while insisting he'd never ordered violence, never intended harm. "My client is guilty of trusting the wrong people," Ross said, "of not asking enough questions about where his nephew got money, of being naive about the corruption around him. But being foolish is not the same as being criminal. The prosecution wants you to believe William Grayson is a mastermind. The evidence will show he's a victim of circumstance." Harper listened and felt nothing. The lies were too obvious, the deflection too transparent. The prosecution called its first witness, the captured prisoner from Walter Reed, now cooperating fully. He testified about receiving orders directly from Grayson to eliminate the threat Harper posed. Described planning sessions where Grayson provided floor plans of the hospital and Harper's exact location. The defense tried to shake him on cross-examination, suggesting he was lying for a plea deal. He didn't budge. "I'm here because I don't want to spend my whole life in prison," he said flatly. "But I'm telling the truth. Grayson ordered the hit. He was clear about it. Harper Vale needed to disappear before she could testify." Next came the forensic accountant who traced $53 million through Grayson's network. The jury's eyes glazed over during the technical testimony, but the numbers told the story: systematic theft, laundering, and funding of criminal operations over 8 years. Then Emma Brennan took the stand. She was nervous but composed, her voice steady as she described growing up with a father who preached integrity while embezzling from his employer. She testified about conversations she'd overheard between her father and Grayson, discussions about managing exposure and controlling narratives. "My father was terrified of Senator Grayson," Emma said. "He told my mother that Grayson owned him, that if the robbery ring got exposed, Grayson would make sure my father took all the blame." The defense attorney objected. Hearsay, speculation. The judge allowed it with limitations. On cross-examination, Ross tried to paint Emma as a bitter daughter seeking revenge. "Isn't it true you haven't spoken to your father in 2 years?" "Yes." "And you blame him for your family's financial struggles?" "I blame him for lying, for stealing, for choosing crime over his family." Emma's voice didn't waver. "But I'm here because he was right about one thing. Senator Grayson controlled everything, and he needs to be held accountable." The prosecution rested after 6 days of testimony. The defense called character witnesses, fellow senators who vouched for Grayson's integrity, business associates who claimed ignorance of any criminal activity. None of it landed. The jury looked skeptical, unmoved by platitudes about Grayson's charity work when the evidence showed him ordering assassination attempts. Then Ross made a calculated gamble. She called Grayson himself to testify. He took the stand in a perfectly tailored suit, his expression humble and regretful. For 3 hours, he spun a narrative of being deceived by trusted associates, of believing his nephew was rehabilitating when actually he was committing crimes, of having no knowledge of any violence. "I trusted Marcus Delacroix with certain business operations," Grayson said smoothly. "I had no idea he was running a criminal network. When I learned about it, I was horrified." "And Ms. Vale?" Ross asked. "Did you order anyone to harm her?" "Absolutely not. The suggestion is absurd. I went to speak with her because I was concerned about her well-being. Her PTSD was clearly affecting her judgment. I wanted to offer help, and my words were taken out of context. It was a masterful performance." Harper watched from the gallery, seeing exactly what the prosecution had warned about: Grayson repositioning himself as the real victim, misunderstood, and persecuted. Then Michael Torres stood for cross-examination. "Senator Grayson, you testified that you had no knowledge of Marcus Delacroix's criminal activities. Is that correct?" "That's correct." Torres pulled up a document on the screen. "This is a text message from Yuta Delacroix, dated 3 months before the diner incident. It reads, "Handle the Virginia situation carefully. No mistakes this time." What did you mean by that? Grayson hesitated. I don't recall the specific context. You don't recall? This was the day after a robbery in Richmond, one of your operations. You were ordering Delacroix to be more careful after a botched job. That's your interpretation. What's your interpretation? Torres's voice was sharp as a blade. What other Virginia situation were you discussing with a man who ran a robbery network? Grayson's composure cracked. I may have suspected certain irregularities. You knew. You funded it. You profited from it. And when Harper Vale exposed your operation, you tried to have her killed. Torres moved closer. You testified that your visit to her facility was out of concern, but the recording shows you threatening to destroy her. Which statement is true? I was frustrated. I spoke poorly. You promised to eliminate her. Those were your exact words. Torres turned to the jury. This man isn't a victim. He's a predator who got caught. The defense tried to recover during redirect, but the damage was done. Grayson left the stand looking shaken. The prosecution called one final witness. Harper's name echoed through the courtroom. She stood, gripped her cane, and walked to the witness stand. Every eye tracked her progress. The limp, the deliberate steps, the evidence of violence survived. She swore to tell the truth and sat down, meeting the jury's collective gaze. Michael Torres approached with careful respect. Ms. Vale, please tell the jury what happened on the morning of October 12th at Rosie's Diner. Harper took a breath and spoke. Her voice was steady, clinical at first, describing the three gunmen, the escalating threat, the moment she recognized the Marine was in immediate danger. I didn't think about it, she said. I just moved, because in that moment hesitation meant death. I'd been trained to recognize that calculation, and I acted on it. Were you experiencing a PTSD flashback, as the defense has suggested? No, I was fully present, assessing the situation in real time. Harper leaned forward slightly. PTSD doesn't make you see threats that aren't there. It makes you recognize them faster. The gunman's finger was on the trigger. His weapon was aimed at the Marine's head. That wasn't a flashback. That was reality. Torres walked her through the rest. The hospital confrontation, Brennan's pressure campaign, the mechanical room fight, the Walter Reed attack. When he asked about Grayson's visit to her facility, Harper didn't hold back. He told me I'd made myself a target, that I should have stayed invisible, that he'd destroy everything I'd built because I'd exposed his operations. She looked directly at Grayson. He wasn't offering help. He was making a threat. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. Ross approached carefully, her strategy clear, paint Harper as traumatized and unreliable without appearing to attack a decorated veteran. Ms. Vale, you've been diagnosed with PTSD, correct? Yes? And you sometimes experience hypervigilance, seeing threats where none exist? I experience heightened awareness. That's different from hallucination. Harper's voice was calm. At the diner, the threat was real. 3 armed men opened fire. At the hospital, Richard Brennan tried to force me to sign away my rights. In the mechanical room, Marcus Delacroix tried to kill me. At Walter Reed, professionals attacked with military-grade weapons. None of that was imagined. But your PTSD affects your judgment. My PTSD makes me better at threat assessment than the average person. I've been in combat. I know what violence looks like before it happens. Harper held Ross's gaze. If you're suggesting I can't distinguish reality from trauma response, you're wrong. I'm sitting here because I made the right calls every single time. Ross tried another angle. At Firebase Viper, you made a decision that resulted in 8 Marine deaths. I made a decision that saved 14 Marines who would have died otherwise. Harper's voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. The Firebase was going to fall. I couldn't save everyone, so I saved who I could. That's not poor judgment. That's triage under impossible conditions. Some might say you sacrificed those 8 men. Some might say I gave them the chance to die as Marines, protecting their brothers while the wounded were evacuated to safety. Harper leaned forward. I carry those 8 men with me every day. Their names, their faces, the families they left behind. But I don't regret the choice, because the alternative was 22 dead Marines instead of 8. If you want to call that poor judgment, go ahead. The 14 men who survived would disagree. The courtroom was silent. Ross tried to recover. Ms. Vale, isn't it true that you've become something of a celebrity since these incidents? Built a nonprofit, done media interviews, profited from the attention? I started the Firebase initiative because people needed training I could provide. The media coverage happened whether I wanted it or not. Harper's expression was ice. But if you're suggesting I orchestrated any of this for profit, you're reaching. I didn't ask to be shot at. I didn't ask for 3 assassination attempts. I didn't ask to become a federal witness. I just refused to let innocent people die when I had the skills to help them. Ross had no more questions. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. Harper spent the time at the Firebase initiative, teaching classes, refusing to sit idle while strangers decided Grayson's fate. When the call came, verdict reached, she drove to the courthouse with Torres and Nash flanking her. The courtroom was standing room only. Grayson sat rigid at the defense table, his face a mask. The jury filed in, their expressions carefully neutral. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit racketeering, how do you find? Guilty. The word hit like thunder. Grayson's shoulders sagged. His attorneys exchanged grim looks. The foreperson continued through all 17 counts. Guilty. 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 Money laundering. Obstruction of justice. Witness intimidation. Accessory to attempted murder. Guilty on every single charge. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks out and remanded Grayson to federal custody immediately. Marshals moved forward, placing him in handcuffs as cameras flashed and reporters scribbled frantically. Grayson turned as they led him away, his eyes finding Harper in the gallery. She met his gaze steadily, feeling nothing but the quiet satisfaction of justice served. Outside, the media scrum was massive. Harper let Torres handle the official statement while she stood to the side, taking in the scene. A reporter broke through security. Ms. Vale, how does it feel to know you took down a U.S. senator? Harper considered the question. I didn't take down anyone. I told the truth. The evidence did the rest. What's next for you? I'm going back to work. I have students who need training and a mission that matters more than this trial ever did. She turned and walked away, Torres and Nash clearing a path through the crowd. 3 weeks later, Harper sat in the courtroom for the final time. Grayson's sentencing hearing drew less media attention than the trial. The story was old news now, the public already moving on to the next scandal. The judge heard from victims, from the families of people hurt by Grayson's criminal network, from federal prosecutors detailing the scope of the damage. Then the judge spoke directly to Grayson. You held a position of public trust and betrayed it in the worst possible way. You used your office to enrich yourself, to shield criminals, and to threaten those who tried to expose the truth. The court finds no mitigating factors, no reason for leniency. The sentence was harsh and final, 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Grayson would die behind bars. Harper watched him being led away in chains and felt the weight she'd been carrying finally lift. It was over. Really, truly over. Outside, a small group waited. Torres, Nash, Cross, General Kimball, Dr. Reyes, and Jessica Howell. He's done, Cross said simply. The network's dismantled, the money's being seized, and every associate he had is either indicted or fleeing the country. What about the others? Harper asked. Brennan's serving his sentence? 30 years, federal maximum security. The third gunman from the diner pleaded out, got 25 years. The compromised DOJ official is looking at 15. Chen had joined them, her expression satisfied. Everyone who touched this case is paying for it. Kimball stepped forward. Which brings me to you, Staff Sergeant. Have you reconsidered my offer? Harper smiled. I have. And my answer is still no. But I'd like to propose a partnership. The Firebase initiative will provide civilian crisis training. The Marine Corps can send instructors to teach specialized combat skills. We work together, combining military expertise with civilian application. Kimball extended her hand. Deal. Dr. Reyes cleared her throat. The Mercy Ridge Board has a proposal too. Full partnership with your nonprofit. We'll provide medical training, equipment, and facility space. In exchange, you train our entire staff in emergency response protocols. I'll need complete autonomy. You'll have it. We learned our lesson about trying to control you. Reyes smiled. You were right, Harper, about everything, and we want to be part of what you're building. Jessica stepped forward last. My editor wants to know if you're interested in that book deal. Your story, your words, your control over the narrative. Harper thought about Margaret Winter's letter, about the 8 Marines at Firebase Viper, about the students learning to protect themselves. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm focused on the present. The group dispersed slowly, everyone returning to their own missions. Harper stood alone on the courthouse steps, looking out at the city. Nash appeared at her elbow. You did it. Actually did it. Took on corruption and won. We did it, Harper corrected. I couldn't have survived this without all of you. So what now? The Firebase initiative expands? It expands. We add more instructors, more programs, maybe open facilities in other cities. Harper's voice strengthened. There are too many people who don't know how to protect themselves, who freeze when violence happens. We're going to change that. That's ambitious. I spent 3 years hiding from who I was. I'm done with small ambitions. Harper turned to face Nash. I'm going to build something that matters, something that saves lives. And I'm going to do it without apology. Nash grinned. There's the Marine I know. 6 months later, Harper stood in the second Firebase Initiative facility, this one in Baltimore, funded by a combination of grants, donations, and partnerships. The grand opening had drawn 300 people, and applications for training slots were backlogged for months. Torres was running the Tactical Response Program, teaching civilians how to recognize and react to active threats. Nash had developed a women's self-defense curriculum that was being copied by organizations across the country. Cross sent retired Marines to teach combat medical skills. Harper moved between programs, supervising, teaching when needed, but mostly watching her vision become reality. A young Marine approached her, fresh-faced, early 20s. Ma'am? I'm Private First Class Chen. I just wanted to say thank you. I was at that diner. You saved my life. Harper blinked, processing. Torres? Changed my name after I made sergeant. Wanted a fresh start. He smiled. But I've never forgotten what you did. You threw yourself in front of a bullet for someone you didn't know. That changed my life. You would have done the same. Maybe. But you did it first. And because of that, I'm here. I'm alive. I got married last month. My wife's pregnant. His voice cracked. You gave me a future, ma'am. I wanted you to know that matters. After he left, Harper stood alone in the training facility, looking at the walls covered with photos, her students, her instructors, the people whose lives had been changed by what they'd learned here. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Miss Vale, this is Margaret Winters. I saw the news about the Firebase initiative. I'd like to make a donation in my son's name. He would have loved what you're building. Semper Fi. Harper's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Instead, she typed back, Your donation will fund scholarships for veterans. Thank you for trusting me with his legacy. That evening, Harper was interviewed by a national news program. Not about the trial. That was ancient history now. About the Firebase initiative and its mission. You went from invisible nurse to national figure in a matter of weeks, the interviewer said. How did that change you? Harper considered the question carefully. It didn't change me. It revealed who I'd always been. I was hiding because I thought I had to be someone else to survive. Turns out, I survive best when I'm exactly who I am. Someone who runs toward danger to protect others. You've been called a hero countless times. How do you respond to that? I respond by getting back to work. Heroes are people who do their jobs when it matters. I'm just trying to teach others to do the same. What would you say to someone who's struggling with trauma, who's trying to hide from their past? Harper looked directly into the camera. I'd say your trauma doesn't define you, but it does inform you. The things you've survived make you stronger, not weaker. And hiding from your past means hiding from your power. She paused. You don't have to be invisible to be safe. Sometimes the safest thing you can do is stand up, own who you are, and refuse to apologize for taking up space. The interview went viral. Within days, Harper's inbox was flooded with messages from veterans, from survivors of violence, from people who'd been hiding their own scars. She read every single one. A year after the diner incident, Harper stood on a stage in front of 1,000 people at the annual Firebase Initiative Gala. The organization had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. 12 facilities across 8 states, over 200 instructors, thousands of students trained. She'd been asked to give a keynote speech. Public speaking wasn't her strength, but she'd learned to push through discomfort. "A year ago, I was a nurse who wanted to disappear," she began. "I thought if I stayed quiet enough, small enough, invisible enough, I could outrun my past. I was wrong." She told them about the diner, about Torres, about the choice to move instead of freeze. "I didn't save his life because I'm special. I saved his life because I'd been trained to act when others panic. And in that moment, I realized something important. My trauma, my combat experience, my scars. They weren't weaknesses. They were tools, skills I could use to protect people." She talked about Firebase Viper, about the 8 Marines who died, about carrying that weight for years. "I used to think those deaths meant I'd failed. Now I understand they meant I made an impossible choice and lived with the consequences. That's not failure. That's the burden of leadership. And if I can teach one person to make the hard call when it matters, those 8 Marines' sacrifice means something." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. The Firebase Initiative exists because nobody should have to face danger unprepared, because trauma doesn't have to be the end of your story, it can be the beginning of your purpose. Harper's voice strengthened. "I'm not asking you to be warriors. I'm asking you to be prepared, to know your own strength, to refuse to be a victim when you have the power to be a survivor." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "A senator tried to destroy me because I told the truth. A hospital executive tried to silence me because I exposed corruption. Criminals tried to kill me because I wouldn't look away. But I'm still here, still standing, still building something that matters." Harper smiled. "Because you can't destroy someone who refuses to be ashamed of who they are." The applause was thunderous. After the gala, Harper returned to her office at the Baltimore facility. The walls were covered with letters from students, photos of training sessions, framed certificates of partnership with military and medical organizations. And in the center, Margaret Winters' letter beside the Firebase Viper photo. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered cautiously. "Vale. Staff Sergeant Vale, this is General Sarah Kimball. I have a question for you." "Ma'am? How would you feel about testifying before Congress? There's a bill being proposed, federal funding for civilian crisis response training. Your organization would be the model. I'd like you to speak in support." Harper leaned back in her chair, processing. From invisible nurse to congressional witness in 1 year. "When do they need me?" "Next month. I'll send details." Kimball paused. "You've built something remarkable, Marine. The Corps is proud to be associated with it." After the call ended, Harper sat in the quiet office, thinking about trajectories, about the path from Firebase Viper to Rosie's Diner to this moment. She'd spent 3 years running from herself, spent a month fighting for her life, spent a year building something meaningful from the wreckage. Her leg would always hurt. The scars would never fade. The nightmares still came sometimes. But she was done apologizing for surviving, done hiding her strength, done letting other people define who she was. Harper Vale was a combat medic who'd saved lives under fire, a veteran who carried her losses with dignity, a civilian who refused to let violence win, an instructor who taught others to survive. She was all of those things, unapologetically, and she was just getting started. 6 weeks later, Harper testified before the House Armed Services Committee. The chamber was packed with representatives, military brass, media, and advocates. She wheeled herself to the witness table, adjusted the microphone, and began. "Members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Harper Elizabeth Vale, former Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. I'm here to talk about why civilian crisis response training matters, and why federal funding for programs like the Firebase Initiative can save lives." She presented data, statistics on active shooter response times, survival rates when bystanders have medical training, reduction in panic-related casualties when people know how to react. Then she made it personal. "Sergeant Miguel Torres is alive today because I had training. 14 Marines came home from Firebase Viper because I made a hard choice. Hundreds of students have graduated from our programs with skills they hope they'll never need, but know they might. Harper looked directly at the committee. We can't prevent every act of violence, but we can ensure people aren't helpless when violence finds them. A representative from Virginia raised her hand. Ms. Vale, some have suggested that teaching civilians tactical response creates a vigilante culture. How do you respond? We're not teaching people to be vigilantes. We're teaching them to survive. There's a difference between knowing how to apply a tourniquet and taking the law into your own hands. Harper's voice was firm. Our curriculum emphasizes de-escalation, escape when possible, and fight only as a last resort. We're creating survivors, not fighters. The questions continued for 2 hours. Harper answered each one with the same steady competence that had defined her military service. When it ended, the committee chair thanked her and promised to seriously consider the funding bill. Outside, Torres was waiting with Nash and a small group of Firebase Initiative instructors who'd traveled to D.C. for the hearing. You crushed it, Torres said, grinning. Pretty sure you just guaranteed that funding. We'll see. Harper was cautious about optimism. Politics is unpredictable. You were incredible in there. Nash squeezed her shoulder. Confident, articulate, unshakable. That's the Harper I've always known. The funding bill passed 3 months later. $20 million in federal grants for civilian crisis response training, with the Firebase Initiative designated as a primary recipient and model program. Harper stood in her office, reading the official notification, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not for surviving, not for fighting, but for building something that would outlast her. Something that honored the people she'd lost by saving the people she could still reach. She picked up her phone and called Margaret Winters. Margaret, it's Harper Vale. I wanted you to know the federal government just funded expansion of our training programs. We're naming the scholarship fund after your son. His legacy will train the next generation of people who protect others. Margaret's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you for remembering him, for making his death mean something. He meant something the moment he chose to stay and fight. I'm just making sure the world knows it. That evening, Harper gathered her core team, Torres, Nash, Cross, Dr. Reyes, and a dozen instructors who'd become family. We've been operating for 18 months, she said. We've trained over 4,000 students. We've partnered with military units, medical centers, school districts. We've proven the model works. She paused. Now we scale. 20 new facilities over the next 2 years. National certification program for instructors. Partnerships with universities to integrate crisis response into medical and education curricula. That's ambitious, Dr. Reyes said. It's necessary. Harper's expression was fierce. Every day someone faces violence unprepared. Every day someone dies because nobody around them knew how to help. We're going to change that. One student at a time if we have to. The team rallied, plans were drafted, locations scouted, instructors recruited. 2 years after the diner incident, Harper stood in the original Firebase Initiative facility in Pinewood Falls. They'd expanded it 3 times, and it was still too small for demand. A plaque hung near the entrance, in memory of the 8 Marines who gave their lives at Firebase Viper so others could live. Their sacrifice continues through every person we train, every life we save, every crisis we help someone survive. Below were their names, 8 men Harper would never forget. Torres appeared at her shoulder. You know they'd be proud, right? Those 8 Marines. They'd see what you built and know their deaths weren't for nothing. I hope so. Harper's voice was quiet. I carry them with me every day. This, she gestured to the facility, this is my way of honoring them. It's working. Torres pulled out his phone, showed her a news article. Woman in Seattle used the trauma training she learned at our affiliate program, saved 3 lives after a car accident, credited our course with giving her the confidence to act. Harper read the article, her chest tight with emotion. That's what it's about. Turning bystanders into first responders. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jessica Howell. Ready to talk about that book yet? Harper smiled and typed back. Maybe, but only if I get to tell it my way. Jessica's response was immediate. Wouldn't have it any other way. 3 years after the diner incident, Harper's book was published, Firebase to Firebase, One Marine's Journey from Combat Medic to Crisis Response Advocate. It hit the bestseller lists within a week. Harper did interviews, appearances, speaking engagements. She talked about trauma, about survival, about the choice to turn pain into purpose. And everywhere she went, people thanked her. Veterans who'd found their calling through her organization, parents who'd learned to protect their children, teachers who'd survived active shooter situations using skills she'd taught them. The Firebase Initiative had trained over 50,000 people, had opened facilities in 32 cities, had become the gold standard for civilian crisis response training. Harper stood on stage at a veterans conference, looking out at 2,000 faces, and realized something profound. She wasn't running anymore, wasn't hiding, wasn't ashamed of her scars or her strength or the choices she'd made. She was exactly who she was meant to be. I spent years trying to be invisible, she told the crowd, trying to disappear into a quiet life where nobody asked questions. But the truth is, I was never meant to be invisible. I was meant to stand up, to act, to use everything I've learned to make sure fewer people suffer than have to. She talked about the diner, about Grayson's trial, about the moment she'd decided to stop running. Some of you are struggling with your own trauma, your own scars, your own guilt about things you couldn't control. Her voice carried across the silent hall. I'm here to tell you, your trauma doesn't disqualify you from purpose. It prepares you for it. The question isn't whether you're broken, it's what you're going to build with the pieces. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, Torres found her. That was powerful. It was true. Harper leaned on her cane, suddenly exhausted. Every word. You've changed a lot of lives, you know, mine included. We changed each other's lives. That's how it works. Torres smiled. My wife had our baby last week. A girl. We named her Harper. The words hit like a physical blow. You what? Harper Elena Torres. Because you gave me a future. Seemed right to give you some immortality in return. His eyes were bright. I hope that's okay. Harper couldn't speak, could only nod, tears streaming down her face for the first time in years. After Torres left, Harper stood alone in the empty backstage area, processing everything that had happened, everything she'd survived, everything she'd built. Her phone buzzed, a reminder for tomorrow's training session at the Baltimore facility. She smiled, wiped her eyes, and headed for the exit. There was work to do. 5 years after the diner incident, Harper sat in her office reviewing expansion proposals. The Firebase Initiative was now a national organization with facilities in 48 cities, partnerships with military units worldwide, and a training model being adopted internationally. She'd testified before Congress 3 more times, had received commendations from the Marine Corps, the American Nurses Association, and the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians, had been featured in documentaries, news programs, and educational curricula. But the moment that mattered most came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. A young woman walked into her office, early 20s, nervous but determined. Ms. Vale, I'm Sarah. I was in a mass shooting 6 months ago. 12 people died. Her voice shook. I froze. I hid. I survived, but I couldn't stop thinking about the people who didn't, about how I did nothing to help them. Harper gestured to a chair. Sit down. Sarah collapsed into it. I've been in therapy. I've been on medication, but nothing helped until I found your organization. I took the crisis response course last month, and for the first time since the shooting, I don't feel helpless anymore. That's good. It's more than good. Sarah wiped her eyes. I want to become an instructor. I want to teach other people what you taught me, so nobody else has to feel the way I felt that day. Harper studied her, saw the trauma, yes, but also the determination, the strength that came from surviving something terrible and choosing to fight back. It's hard work, Harper warned. Teaching people to survive means reliving your own survival, constantly. I know, but it's worth it. Because if I can help one person act instead of freeze, if I can save one life, Sarah's voice broke, then maybe the 12 people who died won't have died for nothing. Harper recognized those words, had spoken them herself 1,000 times. Okay, she said. You're hired. Instructor training starts next month. Show up ready to work. Sarah left glowing with purpose. Harper sat back in her chair, staring at the Firebase Viper photo on her wall. She'd saved 14 Marines that day. Now she was creating an army of people who could save others. The mission continued. 10 years after the diner incident, Harper stood at Arlington National Cemetery in front of 8 headstones, the Firebase Viper Marines. She visited them every year on the anniversary, always alone, always early morning before crowds arrived. "Hey guys," she said quietly, "it's me again, still here, still fighting." She updated them on the Firebase initiative, on the lives saved, on the students trained, on the legacy they'd helped create. 57,000 people trained last year. That's 57,000 people who might save a life because of what I learned from you. Her voice was steady. "I know that doesn't bring you back. I know it doesn't change what happened. But I hope, wherever you are, you know it meant something. You meant something." She placed flowers on each grave, stood at attention, saluted. Then she left, walking through the cemetery toward her car, toward the future, toward the next crisis, toward the next person who needed saving. Because that's who Harper Vale was. Not a hero, not a victim, just someone who refused to let fear win, someone who'd turned her trauma into purpose, someone who'd stopped hiding and started living. And in the end, that was the most powerful thing of all. She drove back to Baltimore, to the Firebase Initiative headquarters, to the students waiting for her to teach them how to survive. Her legs still hurt. The nightmares still came. The scars were permanent. But so was her strength, and she was done apologizing for either. Harper Vale had found her purpose in the ruins of her trauma, and she'd spend the rest of her life making sure others could do the same.